Hello, Highside, Lowside listeners. Zack here, joined as always by my buddy Spurg. This is Season 10, Episode 9, and we'll be talking about recovering from a motorcycle accident. And no, it's not just Spurg and I talking about our rinky-dink little tip-overs in a parking lot. We have three individuals who have come to tell us their story of fairly harrowing motorcycle accidents, their recovery, and how it affected them mentally and physically. We hope you enjoy the conversation with them as much as we did, and we'll jump into it post-haste. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
We talk a lot about changing your motorcycle oil in these Motul ads, and of course Motul has you covered with a full line of synthetic and semi-synthetic oils for your motorcycle. But what about changing your coolant? It is important that every few years you're flushing out your coolant system. And luckily for you, Motul has you covered with a coolant radiator cleaner as well as high quality expert antifreeze. You want to check out the full line of Motul cleaners and coolants over on RevZilla.com/Motul. That's RevZilla.com/MOTUL. And when you're over there on RevZilla.com, just keep in mind that every time you make a purchase with RevZilla, a little bit of that money goes back into funding the programs that you enjoy. Whether it's Zack and I sitting here talking with you on Highside, Lowside, or the shenanigans that people get into when you're out riding for a CTXP episode, or maybe you just appreciate the gear reviews and the product information. RevZilla gives back to riders because that's who we all are. Riders. So keep that in mind next time you need to make a purchase for your motorcycle. From cruisers to sport bikes to adventure bikes and everything in between, we've got you covered at RevZilla.com.
Welcome, everybody, to Highside, Lowside. We are talking about recovering from an accident in this episode, as you learned in the intro. But this will be a special episode for a few different reasons, not least of which, Spurjo, we're not going to do a warm-up where we talk about not the news or some Craigslist find. We're not going to give away t-shirts. We're not going to answer a comment. We're not going to do an engine sound guessing game. Instead, we're going to talk to three people, Joe, Jay, and Luke. Each of these folks have had a sort of harrowing motorcycle accident, and the way they have recovered, we found ourselves intrigued by, interested in, and if not a little bit inspired by. So we wanted to bring them in and talk to them, and that'll basically be the whole episode.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that this is probably one of the most, I don't want to say serious, but one of the most intense episodes that we've ever recorded, listening to some of these stories, and bringing these stories to you, the Highside, Lowside listening audience. And our goal here isn't to share stories that scare people away from getting into riding. Our goal here is to share stories from three individuals who were so passionate and who are so passionate about riding that even as they're going through these life-changing experiences and crashes and surgeries, that one of their driving factors across the board is getting back on a motorcycle because they have so much passion for two wheels. And in the case of Joe Forde, who you're going to hear from here in a second, not only was he so driven to get back on a motorcycle, but then he went and started a nonprofit called the Ride Again Foundation to help people that have gone through this get back on a motorcycle and learn to ride all over again. And that's actually through Joe's work is how we found both Jay and Luke.
Right. So we hope that you find the same kind of resonance we did with their stories, though at times they are difficult. Without further ado, our first guest is Joe Forde, aka Titanium. Joe's accident ultimately resulted in him losing his left leg below the knee. And as Spurg said, eventually after a long recovery, starting a nonprofit to help injured riders get back on a bike. So let's get Joe in here and start the pod.
Joe, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today.
It's been amazing, man. Thank you for having me here.
So I know that we gave a little bit of an introduction before you joined us, but for our audience listening, we just want to kind of get a little bit of the backstory of you and how you got into motorcycling, and then also where the Ride Foundation idea came from, and we know that you obviously had an accident that inspired part of what the Ride Again Foundation is. Yeah. Let's start with, how did you get into riding motorcycles? What was the initial attraction for two wheels for you?
Brother, it was traffic, right? Because I ended up moving. I had a baby and we just bought a new house and it was very far away from my office. So a lot of the commute every day, it got boring. After year, same car, same song, same playlist. I'm like, man, this is getting crazy right now. Let me go on Google, looked up how to ride a bike. YouTube University, of course, taught me how to shift gears, everything. I'm like, I bet. Bought me a bike, and before you know it, I was riding to work. So that's really what got me into the bike life, man.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
So and how old were you at this point? 20-something, 30-something?
I started, like I was like 21, 22.
Wow, dang, okay. And you literally just like, you didn't have friends that rode, you didn't have family members that rode a motorcycle. You were just like, I don't know, man, that seems like a cool thing. So I'm just gonna Google it and figure out how to do it.
I think that's just what it was. I'm a very efficient person. You know, things that make sense is what makes sense, because if I planned, right? I have maybe 6 years in this house. If I'm going to stay another 3 years, this commute, if I'm going to stay at this job, it has to make sense. So I bought myself a little more time by tapping into the bike life. And then that's kind of like where the virus came in. You know, it's like, whoa, I seen what everybody's talking about, you know?
So you started, hang on, Spurg. Before you ask that question, I know the question you want to ask. It's a great one, but we got to wait. What was the first bike?
Ooh, what a question, brother. Yamaha R6, right? 2002, nice little red and black. You know,
2002. That's a fine vintage. I like that era, actually. Okay.
It was carbureted too. So in the morning, winter mornings, I had to really go through the process of just fine tuning so it could run. I could go get dressed real quick. Yeah, I had a good time, but that lasted about maybe a year. I was like, F that. Again, I'm efficient. That was my first introduction to bike life. Okay. I looked up what's the next step. They said fuel injected. I said, all right, I like R6. Got me a nice little 2004 R6. And after that, it's been Yamaha life ever since then.
Okay. So you went 02 to 04. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I raced in 04 R6 way back when. So I'm familiar with that vintage of R6 as well. That's a good choice. Good choice. Spurge, carry on.
My question was, you got into riding because of commuting and wanting to save time and maybe enjoy your commute a little bit more. Then where did motorcycling go from there? Did you start then going out for rides on the weekends, start, making friends that rode? How did you further yourself into the community outside of just riding back and forth to the office?
Yeah, so you know what it is, man. Once you see a biker, we all automatically know we're risking the same things, Then you don't know who's the man behind the helmet. You don't know what family he has, or if he's struggling, or if he's a rich person. You just know that he's there. You meet at a gas station, you meet friends. So I started gathering a lot of friends that way at gas stations. When you're riding, I learned that when you stick your hand out, I'm like, so it's like a secret communication we got going on. So together already, I knew it was a clique. It was bikers versus everybody else. So from that, I feel like the bike community was one of the best and strongest things. And so that's happened to my life right before I got into the accident.
I think it's interesting to hear you say that, because the Spurge said we get a lot of questions from people like, how do I meet people? How do I make friends? I don't know anybody that rides a motorcycle. And I love that for you were just sort of like, I don't know, we all have to get gas, and I'm sitting at the pump and that guy's got a bike. So I just went up and said, hey, do you want to ride? That's great. It's I know it's easier for some people to do than others. And so I can appreciate that, not everyone has the same personality that you do. But that is inspirational all by itself. I think I'm curious, you've mentioned the sort of risk of riding, and, when you first got into it, sort of learning to understand that, and you had people, it sounds like you had people warn you about it. So as much as you feel comfortable, I'd love to know about your, the accident that you had, and sort of what happened, and how it affected, your life writ large, but also your motorcycling life.
Oh, for sure. So let me tap you from a pro perspective from the beginning. So you're talking about somebody who is working hard, trying to create the old American dream for their family, for themselves. And I've been doing everything. I'm a very goal-oriented person. So task after task after task, I'm killing the game. When you get to a level of success in terms of completion or discipline, you can just do anything. Your mind is set to do anything. So here I am at the top. I'm about to get the promotion of my lifetime. My money is going to be good. I can buy my H2, whatever I want to do, I can do. My life is coming together, bro. Now, my wife, we had a wedding to go to, and we was talking before the accident, and she was saying, hey, do you have to ride? I'm like, man, I still have so many different things to do. If you get a head start, I'm still going to catch you. We're heading all the way from Philly to New York. So the traffic, you already know, going to New York is going to be crazy. So I'm already, remember, my whole trauma around traffic, right? I bought a bike for commute, right? So I'm like,
yep.
All right, babe, I'll meet you at the wedding. It was a 2007 or 8 Yamaha R1 at the time. I'm at the wedding. The vibes is nice. You know, I'm having a good time. Me and my wife, we're just talking. You know, it seems dreamlike. You know, I'm doing my thing. Life is, I'm the ultimate high of the experience of life. Not being rich in any way, just accomplishing goals. And then that morning, I'm gearing up. I had like a little fluffy helmet at the time. I think Moto-Journey was a company that made those little fluffy things. And I have it on. And my wife is, as I'm putting my clothes on, she's like, yo, you gonna wear all that gear, bro? I'm like, it's a heat wave. I'm talking, it's hot. I'm like, ooh. She asked me. So usually I use my wife as a kind of guard. I'm like, she's asking me if I need to wear my gear. You know what? I'm gonna go against today. I'm gonna burn up. I'm gonna put my it was a build jacket, leather build jacket, put it on. I had my CDG leathers on. Funny, that's why this whole conversation is crazy. But anyway, I have my build jacket, my CDG pants on. And I was like, babe, you know what? I'm at the next exit, I can stop. You give me a drink and we'll catch up. She's like, all right, let's go. We're driving. She gets lost because I'm following her. I'm like, and she get lost. I was like, yo, I pull up to the window. Follow me. I'll take us to the turnpike. We're gonna head south. Boom, we're on the turnpike. Life is cruising. You know, I'm feeling the breeze, hand on the hip on motorcycle. You know that speed limit where you just cruise and enjoy life and you get to start thinking. I'm vibing. And then my back started like, I need a little stretch. So I slow down, be beneath the speed limit. And then I pull up again. Just, you know what we do, man. I'm not going to speak aloud on it because there's always people listening, but I'm having fun doing what I'm supposed to do. So now I'm at speed limit now. My wife is next to me and I go in front of her. Just, you know, it's my bike following me. I need her to see the beautiful bike, her husband on the bike. Everything is looking amazing. You know what we do, fellas. It is what it is. So as I'm doing that, this lady in front of me, you know, we watch the tire, right? So the tire is going on the white line, inconsistent drifting. I'm like, I need a window to open so I can take it because I need to get out of here because this looks kind of crazy. As a biker, I need to get out because cars can handle things, we can't. So as I hesitated, and then the car stayed steady for again. So at that moment, when I thought it was good, I went for it. So the gap opened, I went through the gap. And as I'm about to transition into my lane, so I made it to my lane. The car decided to keep merging. I guess she didn't see me, right? And it was one of those where, okay, the big car that she was seeing the whole time is there. And now as she merges in, she clips my front tire. I'm right next to her. So I got the crazy death wobble. The bike is shaking. And in that moment, I'm like, wow. I am about to crash. It is about to get really crazy. Of all riders, I'm one of the best riders of my group. So got the dead wobble, bike goes over. As I'm about to, there's a gap between my crutch and the tank. And then that's a first dime. Boom. Felt that. I'm like, oh. You know, I don't know if you ever got a soccer ball or anything to your private area, but it took everything. But I'm already crunched, so I can't, there's no much more stretching for that hurt. So I took the maximum pain. And then I was like, okay, I clenched my teeth. And as I'm clenching my teeth, I only did that because I just didn't want to survive and have no teeth in my mouth, bro. So you get what I'm saying? I didn't need that kind of life. I'm like, yo, just in case I survive, I have to make sure that this works out. So this
is in that moment you're saying. You're thinking like, I gotta clench my. Okay, all right, yeah.
I'm telling you,
it's amazing that the fact that you remember your whole thought process while this is happening is crazy.
I can't forget it, bro. So in that moment. And I don't talk about my story purposely. I'll tell you, this whole podcast is something that I was waiting for a long time before we even met the Ride Again Foundation. Because in that moment, right, when I tapped into what the brain could do, I'm like, how it didn't make sense that I can remember all of this right before. And the crash happened like that. It happens quick, but everything slows down. So when I landed, and I remember this tasting gravel in my mouth, and I'm like, the clenching teeth thing didn't work because that's clearly my teeth shattered in my mouth. I'm like, all right, whatever, I learned. Then I see my wife hovering over me and she's like, hey, I could see the veins in her eyes. Like her eyes were just extra red. I know when you hang down, you see the blood rush into somebody's face, but I'm seeing a bunch of sadness and fear in my wife's eyes. And I'm like, damn, I was trying to look cool and I'm down. And I'm like, what's going on? So I was like, yo, pick me up, Nick. My wife's name is Nick. I was like, pick me up. She's like, you don't, no, she didn't say lost. She's like, I just can't, Joe. And I passed out. So then when I opened up my eyes again, I saw a chopper. I'm like, oh my God, I'm definitely not going home today. So in my brain, I'm only thinking like, yo, I got to get up. Every time I woke up, I have to get up. Literally, pass out, I have to get up. When I saw the chopper, I was like, okay, that's happening. And then my breath started going away. And I'm like, yeah, this is not a dream. This is really happening. It's taking too long to wake up. So I'm like, so my breathing started going away and away and away. And because I ran track and I was a soccer player heavily, like literally, I played in the males league before my accident. And because I'm good at just breathing, I started to control my breath. So when somebody came over me, I'm like, hey, I don't think I'll be able to continue to talk, but I'm going to give you all the information you need. My name, my address, my kid's name, my wife's name, the cars that we're driving, my social security, my everything. I gave it all in one, and that was all I remembered. Boom, wake up. I'm hearing the hospital things. Beep, beep. I'm like, I can't open my eyes. I'm like, oh my God. I survived. Holy, you're in my head. I'm like, I survived, but what is going on? I can't, there's nothing now. It's just my eyes.
Do you remember, were you airlifted? So you mentioned a helicopter. Did a helicopter land and take you to the hospital?
Yes, bro. The helicopter landed in the middle of the turnpike. I caused so much traffic that day. They flew me all the way to Trenton at first. And then at Trenton, they said, yo, we can't fix him up. He's a double amputee. Like, he is cooked. Like, he is cooked. So then there's like, all right, let's find the pen. Flew me to Penn. Luckily, the chopper didn't leave yet, bro. Everything that's worked out crazy. The chopper didn't leave yet. After they put me on the table, put me back in the chopper, send me back to Penn, and damn, those cats are, yo.
Do you remember any of that, or was this all?
No.
Okay.
The helicopter transfer, don't remember anything. All I remember was going into the chopper, feeling that uncomfortable, steady, like it was a hard bed. And then I remember waking up, hearing my wife talking about a book with her sorority sisters. That's the in between. She filled me and she's like, babe, like they flew you to another hospital. Like that hospital couldn't save your legs. So they took you to a hospital that really was experts at it. So I was like, wow. When I woke up and I saw the view, I laughed. I'm like, so this is the type of insurance I got, right? Because I'm like, I'm in the hospital. It's looking good. I'm seeing buildings. I'm like, this is gonna be an expensive bill. And I was like, yo, but I can't talk. I'm like, where did I crash, bro? I swear to God, if this ever happens, and I pray it doesn't, one of those things you're gonna be like, yo, is it where I'm at? Where am I? And you gotta figure that out by yourself, especially if you're tubed up. There's no talking, just you and your brain. And when you can start opening your eyes, it is being born again. It's one of those things, man. But so in that situation, waking up, hearing my wife, I remember asking, I did this. I could use my hands. So I did this, and she's so smart, bro. She's nice. I'm so blessed to have her, bro. So she grabbed a pen and a paper, and the first thing I wrote was Chevy Equinox gray. Because I'm telling her, I want her to know that I'm not a shrimp, like I'm not a vegetable, like, because she don't know. Nobody has. She hasn't told me in 4 days, so I need to comfort her.
So it was 4 days that you were out, basically.
I woke up on the third day or into the fourth, one of those days, but it's definitely 3 days.
And I assume when you wrote down gray Chevy Equinox, that was the car that pulled over into you.
Yeah, bro.
And that's what you remembered. Wow.
Yes, and every time I see Equinox, I just don't play around with them. I just don't. It's trauma. Trauma does that. I'm just like, I don't like it. I don't like it. That's the last thing I seen was the bumper. Yeah, Equinox PTSD.
So Joe, you mentioned the amputee part for our audience that isn't familiar with your story. What at this point, you're waking up. Do you understand the extent of the damage at this point? And then also for our audience at some point, can you explain the extent of your injuries and what you were coming back from?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So at that time, I wake up, I could see everything is covered with sheets, but I could see my foot in like an X fix. I'm like, there goes soccer. I'm like, damn, that's my favorite foot. I use that. That's my baby. That's my baby, bro. Like, that's my favorite foot, bro. So I'm like, I see it in the cage. I'm like,
I've never thought about having a favorite foot before. That's really interesting. I mean, I'm right-handed, so I'm used to I have a good right hand. But yeah, favorite foot.
I'm a soccer player, so I feel you, Joe. I feel you. It was your right foot.
My right foot, bro.
Your right foot. Yeah.
So, lost my left leg, and it's funny because my son has a left foot now. It's just crazy how, if you ever tap into the crazy world, and I'll tap you later on the story. But so I see that, and I was like, all right, the tubes are out. Let's fast forward. The tubes are out now. I can speak, right? So the conversation was, the first thing she said was, say your name, the nurse. And I remember trying to say my name, but nothing would come out. Like, my voice is gone. Just whatever's been in my throat had for 3 days. I don't know how it works. I just couldn't speak. Right. And the first thing I said was, I was like, she's like, say your name. I was like, I gotta try. In my head, I'm saying this. I have to show them that I'm here. I was like, Joseph. My voice came out like a girl, bro. So when I heard that, I'm like, no way. I did everything proper, but I lost my voice. Now I sound like a chick for the rest of my life. So I'm like, damn. thank God I'm married because I don't have to worry about the dating scene. So I was cracking myself up, bro. But within time, it started coming deeper and deeper. Joseph. And then I have it on video. Everybody's clapping. It was amazing. But when I asked when I was able to speak, and I was like, hey, what are my injuries? And she's like, well, she gave me the medical terms. I'm like, that's a lot. That's a whole lot. Let's go to the regular stuff. She's like, you broke your neck, you broke your back, you lost your spleen, you ruptured your kidneys, and you shattered your entire genitals, bro. Like, it's cooked. Like, I'm like, so as she's labeling these things, I'm like, all right, spine jacked up. Hopefully I could walk. I'm like, all right, lost spleen. What does that even mean? Don't even know. I never even knew what it's like. I know your spleen is there for the immune system, but I'm like, how living without it? Like, I don't even know what that life is like. So whatever, I'll figure that out. Scrotum. Woo, boy, can I have kids? That's crazy. Wait a minute. I'm living my dream. You know, I just came back from India, implementing policies and procedures for my job. I'm like, what does that even mean for my life? So everything starts playing on in your head. Like, what is life gonna look like? Definitely the things that you used to do, you can do. So what is life gonna look like? Now it starts happening to my son, and that started breaking me down. That emotion broke me. I could never think about it. That broke me the most. I didn't know how to properly deal with the fact that I've lost a certain life that I've set up to live with my son, and I have to recreate myself like in a whole different kind of way. I wasn't ready for that. I had to deal with a lot of the finances. It gets chaotic, bro. Like when you go down, if your business isn't in order, meaning like your accounts, your emails, your job, like anything, you have to be on point because then it's for your spouse or your person. And there's a lot of people, they aren't even married. So imagine, it's chaotic. It's chaotic.
Right,
but when she told me I lost my legs, that's when it hit me. I'm like, I'm cooked. I'm cooked for a long time.
So you lost your left leg and your right foot. Is that correct?
Yes. Right. So I say that a lot, but what you would see is a foot, right? You would see my foot looking like a foot, but it's a shell of a foot. There's an image where the foot is just into pieces, right? You can see it's like, yo, how are they even going to put that together? And remind you, the first hospital said that I was a double amputee. I was pronounced a double amputee based off of the injuries. So the fact that they saved it, and that only happened because my wife, they was like, yo, what do you want to do? Like his leg is cut, is jacked up. If he keeps it, he's going to have a terrible life of pain. However, you know, the emotional side of that, at least he has a foot, right? On the back end, he can cut it and he can have a different quality of life. But that's him waking up seeing no legs. So it was a bit of a situation for her, and she made the decision for me to keep it. And from time to time, she would, based on the pain that I experienced every single day, because she manages my pains, my pain medicine, everything. She always said, yo, I really wish I had said to cut both legs off. Like, you're miserable in a certain kind of way that nobody ever would see, only me and you. So even when you tap into that level of pain, it's like, I put that woman through so much. So yes, the bike is fun, but there's another side to it, you know?
Certainly. Thanks for sharing all that with us, man.
That's a lot of story.
It is.
From a recovery standpoint, Zach, before we walk through a little bit of recovery, did you have any more questions about the accident?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, I think what I took away from it is that it can all happen really fast, and you can think that you're being careful, and so it's a you know, we're all sort of walking that tightrope to some extent, and it's not always a really you know, like egregious error that's made or something like that. Sometimes it's just happenstance, and the attitude that you have about it's incredible, Joe. It's amazing to hear you tell this story because it's really kind stuff, and that is it's impressive. I guess my only question about I do want to move on and talk about that kind of thing. What was the sort of like total recovery time, if you will, or like, you know, maybe you're still recovering to some extent, but like, you know, when did you feel like you had reached a plateau and you felt like the new version of yourself to some extent?
So I'm gonna be fully transparent. It's a 2-part process. I felt like I wanted to show my friends and my followers and my family, or just people who generally contributed to my GoFundMe, that what they invested in was legit. I did what I said I would do. I'll come back and I'll live a good life. Right. But that took me about 7 months. And that was like, it's possible. It is possible, bro. But it takes you have to be very nutty. It's either, this may sound crazy, you go through a level of depression when you get hurt, right? Depending on how bad things were or currently in your life. And then you get the suicidal thoughts. Everybody's suicidal thoughts are different. I may think about it for a different reason. Somebody else might think for a different reason. But in those moments, you really have to like push past it because it's such a negative thought. The brain does this thing where it just goes, there's always like, but the what ifs. Like but you could also control the other side of it. You have to kind of lean on this side versus this side. But it's not wrong to think it, but it's about really staying on this side because we are better here than not being here, right? So in that, fighting myself in that space, my kids really kept it here. Remember I told you it was hard to think about my kid, my son?
Yeah.
But I was like, yo, it'll be unfair for me to punk out as a father and say, yo, man, I'm just going to be disabled. You know, I have the ability to say that I'm disabled. I have no legs. I look at my life. Everything is tough. Everything is tough. But what is my son life going to be like? Do I end it now and be like, yeah, my dad got crashed on a bike and now he's forever afraid of bikes and never want to ride a bike? Or do I continue to push and show people that, yeah, the bike is crazy, but there's more than to it than just it being a bike ride, and it's really being a mental part of kind of like overachieving, or it gives a level of empowerment, a feeling that it's undescribable, bro. Because riding able body is the most excellent thing any human could do, in my opinion, because they've given us a toy that we could put on the streets. So dangerous. I wish people knew how dangerous it was, especially if you're trying to get good.
So to back up a little bit, I want to know when you had obviously had this, horrific experience, and a long recovery. And at what point did you mentioned that you wanted to show people that it wasn't for nothing, that like the sort of the support that people had given you, whether it was financial or emotional or whatever, wasn't for nothing.
Yes.
When did you have the idea that you would get on a bike again? Because there must have been a time when you thought it wouldn't happen. Or
did you always think that you were going to get back on a bike?
Yeah, that's
walk us through that mental process.
Yeah, that's a great question. I vowed to never ride a bike again. In the hospital,
you did.
I told my wife, I was like, yo, never again.
Right.
I effed up, bro. I paid the ultimate price. Like, I effed up. So I was like, how can I? Just me being a kind person. I'm married now. Think about it. It's like I felt like it's unfair. Now she has to take care of me in a certain kind of way.
Sure.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna ride until you give me permission. And she was like, all right, I gave her that, right? She was like, okay, I got you. Thank you for respecting what is, and we'll continue to push as a family together. So
yeah. So that you had a moment where you realized that your wife gave you permission, I assume, or she said like you could get on a bike and that'll make you happy.
Did she give you permission?
It would make, or did she?
Did she give you permission or not, Joseph?
All right. Or are you still waiting for that position?
I know enough about my relationship with my wife that sometimes I do things I'm not supposed to do, and I hope that she's not listening. So walk us through it, Joseph.
Spurs asked all the right questions. So she didn't give me the permission, but here's what happened, fellas. Father's Day was coming, and I know my wife always sets me up for Father's Day. I've been moping in the house, looking sad. Is
this the next year? Because Father's Day is June, and you crashed in June. So it was 1 year later or 2 years later, maybe, or
7 months later, bro. So Father's Day is coming for June 2019 is when the accident happened, and June 2020 coming up. I'm about to get a new bike. I'm thinking because I'm doing everything right. I said I'll get strong. She's like, yo, do your therapy, do everything you're supposed to do, and if you show strength, I might. I'm like, all I needed to hear was that there's a might. Which means I told you said might. There's something going on right there, right? So fast forward, I was like, one day, I asked my sister, she had a Kawasaki 636. I was like, yo, but can I still ride? It was always in my head, but can I still do it? I need to get a bike. Who's going to trust me with their bike? Because I can definitely throw it down 100%. But I always go in there saying, hey, if I drop your bike, I'll pay for it. I promise you. All right. So my sister let me sit on the 636. I'm like, I could do this stuff, man. I have a video of me wiggling out my prosthetic limb. I'm like, oh, she's just cracking up. But I'm like, I went home, went to the PC. I was like a 2015 BMW S1000RR. Because in that moment, I'm like, if I come back with a bike, it has to be a bike that's loud, that's, wow, how could he ride that bike? Or what does he know? I wanted to create some type of thing. I know people talk. So because I
didn't want to start small. You wanted to jump back in.
The big dogs. Okay. I need computers. I need everything. Make me feel good on the bike. I'm going to go compete with them, get the eyes on me, and then boom, show them, whoa, I'm riding with no legs. That's crazy. Hold on. Something's different right now. I knew that would kind of spook the algorithm. And that's how I started tapping into the social media side of things. And since then, it's been a journey like that. It's been madness. So I figured I could duplicate that process by just telling my story online and inspiring people to just see it,
So I think this is actually a really good segue. I'm presumably you and your wife are still together and it didn't end in a horrible divorce.
Yes.
But I do think that this is a good segue into the Ride Again Foundation in the same way that you came back from the brink yourself, the same way that it sounds like you helped your friend come back from his accident. Walk us through, you're recovering from this accident. You're trying to figure out how to get back into motorcycling yourself. You have a full-time career that you're successful at and you're trying to get back into after being away from it for an accident. At what point do you decide that you want to start the Ride Again Foundation and start to help people get back onto a motorcycle?
Yeah, for sure. So when I started doing a bunch of the social media storytelling, I realized that there were people that really had similar stories like myself that didn't have the access to the phones or just didn't care to do the work to put it out there, or some people feel like I have to have an expensive camera to even compete on your level. That's just preference. It's really how the algorithm will treat you. And you know how that goes with social media. But I found it in myself that since I'm home and I'm technically disabled and there's something I can do to help, I can help, one, put your story on the map in front of views that I've acquired. And two, that kind of helps you gain some type of inspiration that a community that I've helped develop and build, you can gain the inspiration and all the resources for it as a disabled person, because it's already difficult walking. It's already difficult learning. I know we visit the hospitals more than once every month. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And I feel like on the easy part of things, if there's one less thing to worry about, especially that there's joy to it, I want to give you that for free. So that's where the nonprofit idea came about. It's like, how do I get the community to fund something that's for the community? In other words, right? But they needed somebody to do it. And I feel like sometimes that's why I said the accident had to be me, because I was always a person to approach at a gas station. I'm always a person to actually want to put the effort out to make a difference.
And you're organized.
I try to be organized. I try to be, sometimes I fall short, but at the same time, like I know the blueprint and the foundation to stay strong and to remain disciplined. Right. So the foundation idea came about when I met the Bike Experience USA. Right. I was in California about 3 years later. I got a call from my sis. She's like, yo, bro, I got in contact with this guy that does helps people with disabilities ride. She's like, his name is Mike. I'm like, Mike from T-Bex? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh, my buddy Trackstars mentioned him a while back.
What's T-Bex?
Oh, T-Bex is the Bike Experience USA. Okay. And that's the abbreviations for it, right? So I'm like, a guy that helps people with disabilities. I know him. He's legit. So one day he had an event that was enough of a ride for me. It was like an hour, 20 minutes. I went to see it. And I saw what he was doing. And I'm like, whoa, you're an angel, bro. Like, yes, I went through my journey of doing it by myself. And I've even built adaptive bikes, helped build adaptive bike for amputees, but it was so costly. I'm like, I went broke trying to help people like that, right? I'm like, yo, it has to make sense. I can't do this by myself. Because he does it in a race way. He has races, people starting from the back of the pack, coming up first. Like some legit people who with legit talent, but are continuously overlooked because of their disability. So that's T-Bex USA.
So let's pause for 1 second. So the Bike Experience USA is helping people with disabilities ride a motorcycle, presumably by adapting the motorcycle to work with their disability. Does that sound correct?
That's right. 100% right.
And so the Bike Experience was already operating. They were getting people with disabilities back onto motorcycles. Yes. You kind of got introduced to Mike. Presumably you went and kind of attended one of his events.
Yes.
And then the Ride Again Foundation was, now what you're trying to do is take that experience and put it more onto a racetrack. Does that sound like I'm following correctly?
100%. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, because I knew that street riding as a disabled person, getting a license, you have to, let's say you don't have a motorcycle license, you're not going to pass, guarantee. You're going to drop that bike 1,000,000%. So I want to help you. I want to kind of like skip past that, where you come to the track, you have a good time, you have experienced coaches, people who actually care about your disability. We have a motorcycle simulator, right? Which helps you forget about going on the bike or fear of dropping somebody's expensive bike. Drop this bike all you want. It's not going anywhere. It's meant to get dropped. It's really to see what that strength, whether you have no legs, see what your upper body feels like. If you have no arms, see what that feels like versus going straight to the bike. Now, after the simulator kind of like gets your body prepped, we take you to the Bike Experience USA, that event which is built within the Ride Again Foundation. Mike is on my board and he contributes to that process. It's almost like the funnel is, I post a story, a survivor gets interest, I send them to Mike sends them back to me, full circle, right? So it's a whole, I guess, the community effort, the collaboration between the two entities is really to not reinvent the wheel, but just kind of expand and like amplify the movement, right?
Right. And how does the funding, ultimately, what's the funding model? Like it's community fed, it's people who donate, or is it companies that fund it and you sort of like channel the money to the right resources and the right people and then help people?
All of the above. All of the above. Every single bit of it comes in as, if you want to help us, you can donate in any shape or fashion, whether it's motorcycles, whether it's suits, tire warmers, anything that's necessary for a motorcycle, and anything that's necessary for health. I'm tapping into both fields, the bike and then Afterlife, because there's so much more to the foundation than just putting them on a track.
Right.
Eventually, we're going to plan to put them into job placements, and then we'll give them the opportunity to get prosthetic limbs. So all these companies that, from titanium, right? I have my own brand by myself. I've acquired a lot of different relationships. All I did was have my relationship companies. Just take a look at what I'm doing. If you can support it, you can support it. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for nothing else but support, right? And then there are people that would see my story, the survivors, right? For example, you go through a situation, let's say you want to ride, 25 years past, you don't know riding is possible. You had 25 years worth of saving. You didn't know riding was possible, and then you come to ride a motorcycle, boom. You're going to feel, yeah, yo, you changed my life. I'm going to give you whatever you want. Donations like that is what we receive. It could be any amount. It could be $10, it could be $20,000, or whatever it is. Whatever you feel that's this worth to you, do it. Or you could break it up in 10 years. As long as we have enough to continue doing what we're doing for free for all people with disabilities, we're all good. It's like it's almost like the insurance for yourself, right? Yeah, you're riding, you're having a good time, but if you survive, you don't want to do this by yourself. I promise you that. I did it. It's not, I don't recommend this ever to anybody. And don't have a kid on top of a disability, because then you're cooking, you're in trouble. And I have a little 2-year-old that's probably gonna be banging my door in a little bit. So it gets crazy, brothers. It gets intense. It gets intense.
If someone's listening and they've been injured or they have a disability and they've always wanted to try riding a motorcycle, but they're not sure, they didn't even know that it was possible, right? You know, so how does someone get involved with the Ride Again Foundation from a participant standpoint? Like, how does that process work for them? And just walk them through that if there's someone out there listening to you right now.
Yeah, so they would go to either the rideagainfoundation.org or tbexusa.org, and in there we will navigate you to go to the register as a participant, and it'll take you through the steps. Once you log in, we'll have your information, and then there's a process where we will reach out to you. Right now, because we're still starting up, staffing is a problem and proper resources are a problem, because again, I'm doing the editing, I'm doing the posting, I'm doing the reach outs. There's a lot to it. And I also have a disability. So it's not as quick, but we don't need to be quick because we don't even have enough bikes, right? So we have like 7 bikes right now, and we have over 500 survivors willing to ride. It's just about giving them the opportunity to fly out here, right? So we have somebody that's from, for example, this year, coming from the UK, and he's going to come have a good time with us. And his journey, his story is going to be amazing. So I think things like that, giving people the opportunity to ride again is next level. And it gives you the power to, I guess, step off the bike and then approach your life in a different perspective. That's all.
You are somebody that, you know, learned how to ride a motorcycle because you wanted to just save some time on your commute. You got passionate about it. You started making friends with it. Then you had a crash. You lost a leg, a foot. You spent months, you know, you're in some ways, you're probably still recovering from this. And then after learning how to ride a motorcycle again, you started this charitable foundation. It's an amazing story. And I think for anyone listening, hopefully the takeaway is, you know, inspirational, with what you've been through and how much the passion of riding, has still, you know, kind of, you know, been the thread through your story. We have some additional people that we're going to talk to that have some ties with the Ride Again Foundation. They've got their own stories, but is there, you know, in closing our chapter with you, is there anything that you want to leave our audience with that you feel we haven't highlighted so far?
No, I think you did a good job of touching every single thing. I feel like what I want people to know is that don't wait until it's too late to support something that's for you, right? We all have a time limit, and time is guaranteed to nobody. But what I do know is that we all won't die rich, but there's something called hope, and hope is the currency. So we're providing hope to the people, and it's hope for you that you can continue riding safely, and there's somebody or an organization that's here to support you in the best of ways 100%, because bike is life, and it's helped me. It's helped me navigate through my depression, and it's given me the opportunity to just kind of still feel empowered to be a good dad, a good husband, a good person, and just to keep pushing forward, because it is hard. Every day is hard. Every single day is hard. And it probably won't ever get easy, bros. Like, if you're in the hospital looking at this, just understand that, you know, I did that for you. I did that for us because there was nobody doing it. And that's it. That's everything I got to say. Please donate. Help me help you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Thank you for your time. And for sharing your story and your experience, and doing so in good graces. You have a sort of amazing attitude and buoyancy to your outlook on life and everything. And it's incredible that you're putting so much effort into making people's motorcycling lives and lives in general better. So so thanks for taking the time to talk to us, Joe. We appreciate it, man.
No problem. It's an honor. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate you.
Joe Forde, man, oh man. I mean, what a crazy story.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, Spurge. There's a lot of lessons I think we can all take from his story. Ultimately, if nothing else, an organized individual, who very task oriented.
I mean, it was so interesting, and like everything was very like, why did you get into motorcycling? I wanted to be faster and get into the office quicker. Like you just, this is my plan and this is how I'm going to execute on it. And like, I think it was amazing too, that not only did Joe come back from his accident, find his path to recovery, but then he kind of upsided his life again when he said, I'm going to start this foundation and, spend so much of my time trying to give back and help other people find their way back as well.
Yeah, it's a remarkable instinct to have that, right? To just decide that that's what you want to do with your time after going through all that. So yeah, a lot of respect to him.
Who do we have next, Zach?
Right. Our next guest is Jay Richardson, who had a very strange accident, as you'll hear, a number of years ago, that ultimately left him with his left arm amputated below the elbow and some very severe burns. Jay, for what it's worth, is a member of the Army National Guard, which you'll probably hear about, and he lives in Georgia. And aside from that, we will let our conversation with Jay take it from here. Okie doke. Jay Richardson. Here he is in the flesh. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us today.
No problem, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
Right on. Well, we're going to get into, I'm sure, lots of stories you have to tell, and hopefully insights and some inspiration for our audience. But we're going to start off with a very easy question, which is, how did you end up riding motorcycles? And what was your first bike?
Man, I ended up, my dad actually rode motorcycles, unbeknownst to me, for a long time. I will always go, as I was younger, I would see a helmet. Like when I go visit him, I will always see a helmet and never seen a bike. I think that was on purpose. So I went and go and tell our grandma so she wouldn't lose her mind.
Right.
So, as I got older, it was like fresh on my mind. So my first car was like a 86 Classic Cutlass. And my second was a bike. That bike was like I bought a little 250, and I was so excited. I went and tried to join my dad them and ride with them. Man, I had that bike for maybe 2 weeks.
And were you a teenager? Like you freshly had your license, or were you, how old were you when you got a bike?
I'm 18 at the time. So yeah, I got
dang, okay.
as soon as I was legal.
So you said you had it for 2 weeks. Did your dad take it away from you, or did you?
No.
Okay.
I got bamboozled is what happened. I learned real quick. So my dad's on a R1, the same R1 he has now. It's a 2015. And I go out and I ride with a bunch of his buddies. I met them at like BP. And they was like, hey, we're gonna ride to Gresham, which is maybe a couple X's up, highway over. And as soon as we got on the highway, all I seen was disappearing tail lights. And I was in the HOV lane trying to catch them. And this minivan I was giving that bike everything it had, but this minivan was on my tail. It kind of like it got out the HOV lane, came around me, kind of flicked me off, and it went around. And I was going up a hill, and I was giving it everything it got. So I was like, nah, I can't do this. So I went ahead and posted that bike up for sale that day.
Man, so you went out to ride with, you bought a 250, which is a responsible beginner bike choice, I will say officially, and then they just dropped you like a wet towel on the freeway.
Like a wet towel. They called me later on the day, like, man, what happened to you? I was just like, y'all left me. Y'all left me.
Seriously.
What was your reaction? So you're 2 weeks into this. Obviously, you sold the bike and you bought something a little bit bigger. So it didn't discourage you from riding. It almost maybe perhaps inspired you to go a little bit faster, maybe quicker than you would have otherwise?
Yeah, not at all. So I got the 250, and like you say, and it wasn't a legit 250. Like, we're not talking about like a Honda or anything. This is a Chinese made bike. Like, I probably bought this thing out of a flea market, you know. So the learning curve was really quick. Like, you know, I was riding it everywhere. I was riding it to work, but I just didn't get that much highway time. And when I did get on the highway, I guess until you ride with other bikes, you think you're fast, you know, especially going from riding by myself to now riding with stacks, you know. So when that was just my wake up call. I got that bike and I thought it was something, and here I am on the highway, and 2 seconds, they're gone.
So what did you trade up to?
Yeah.
So instantly when I bought that bike, it probably sold when I posted it. It sold the next day, and then I went and bought a 600 from this guy that used to race bikes all the way in Villarica, and I'm talking about night and day. So that was my real, you know, taste of a real bike, and they didn't leave me again. So,
well, it's funny when we were talking to Joe. One of the questions that I wish I would have asked him, and that I'm going to ask you, you know, do you feel like going from the 250 to the 600 was too much of a jump, or did you feel like with your experience with the 250, you were able to then get on and appreciate some of the power that the 600 provided for you?
No, I definitely, I think I was able to appreciate it. It didn't come off as too much power, but I understood that there was definitely, especially like I said, it wasn't even a true 250. Like that bike was probably topping out at like 80 miles per hour, 85 miles per hour. So to get on that, and I'm pretty sure it probably took me maybe another year to even figure out what all that, like the top end of that 650. I mean, that 600, like I said, I bought it from a guy, and he used to race bikes. So it was different. I can say that bike was definitely different.
What was it? Do you remember? It was 600 Super Sport, I assume. It was an R6 or a GSX R600 or something like that?
Yep, it was a Gixxer. I think it was the 03 body style. So it was
okay.
It was a little bulky, you know, because at the time we were talking, this is 2015, you know, so it's a bit outdated, but it still has some get up and go.
So I know you mentioned your dad's friends. How did you find people to ride with? Was it mostly through the people that your dad was already riding with, or, you know, how did you branch out and find motorcycle communities? That's something our audience often doesn't know where to start, and I'm interested to see, you know, where you branched out to and how'd you made motorcycle friends.
So instantly, I went on Facebook, and here in Georgia, we have a group that's called Georgia Two Wheel Nation. It's just a big open forum, and man, this thing is, I can't even. If I tell you the number, I'll probably be wrong, but I'll just take a guess and say that it's well over like 5,000 members in it. So, I quickly learned just by looking at certain posts where the major meetup spots were. So these 3 spots, if you go there any Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, you're guaranteed to see other bikes posted up.
Gotcha. And did you we'll have more questions about the military later, but did you join the military around the time you got a motorcycle? You said you were 18 when you got a bike.
Yeah, I joined the military straight out of high school. So I joined the military in 2018. I joined the National Guard. So pretty much right out of high school, I went to basic training in AIT, and then I was able to come back home, and that money is what gave me, you know, was able to start up for that bike.
Right.
All right.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit here. So, you know, you're riding a motorcycle at 18, you're leaving high school, you're getting into the military. What's the timeline look like for your accident? And let's transition into that part of the story a little bit for our audience.
Okay. So 2015, I get back from the military around, I say February, I'm out. And then by springtime, I'm looking for a bike, you know? So I bought that first bike, around maybe March, April, you know, and I get a good solid, you know, month of riding before I sell the bike. And then I buy that 600, probably the summer of 2015. So from the summer of 2015, I ride a good year. 2016, September comes, and that's where I have my accident.
Okay. And you were in the military still at that point?
I was. I actually, the day that I had my accident, September 4th of 2016, I just came home from a military assignment. So I go on the military assignment, I come back, the first thing I want to do is like, I want to ride with some of my buddies that I was riding with previously. So, you know, we all meet up at a QT. It's me, my boy Matt, my boy Phil, and obviously when we get there, it's other bike riders there. But you know, we all meet up at this spot, and the plan was to ride from the QT on Panola all the way up to Varsity, maybe meet up with some other riders at that BP, and then go from there to another hangout spot, which is Edgewood. It's just a strip with just, bunch of people, bunch of little bars and just hangout spots.
And so walk us through what happened that day. Do you remember it, or do you because you've got some really impactful videos on your Instagram channel. So for our audience that maybe hasn't perused your Instagram yet, like, you meet up with your buddies, what happens? What transpires?
Okay. So, now that I meet up with them on Panola and that QT, we pretty much are sitting there for a while looking at all the rest of the bikes. I'm gazing around. I'm seeing all the rest of the bikes. I noticed that there was a bunch of cruisers there that day, a bunch of baggers. Then it's just a few sports bikes, and we started talking about, hey, man, we're hungry. Let's go get some food. So we decided that we're going to go up to Varsity and probably get us a bite to eat. So I just decided to gas up. I'm filling the gas tank up to as much as it could take. And then I remember going back to my boy Phil, and I'm like, hey, man, let's get ready to go to Varsity. And as I'm talking to Phil, it was a guy that came up, and he had on his leather jacket. He was a part of that group with the baggers. They was a actual group. And he came up to me. He's like, hey, man, what y'all getting into? And we told him we're going to pretty much go to Varsity. It's going to be a group at BP. We're probably going to meet with that group and then head with a group with them to Edgewood. And he was like, oh, we're back. Well, he's like, we'll trail you guys. We're going to do our own thing, but, we're right behind y'all. And then we was like, cool, we're going to pull off now. So I finished gassing up. And then I'm telling my boy Phil, and I'm like, hey, man, they going to be riding. So, you know what I'm saying? We need to step on it, So we get on to I-20, and I'm jumping ahead of them a little bit. And I get over into that first right lane, that first, and then I let the guys pass me. And then once they pass me, I already know how the baggers work. I know they already got somebody in their crew to kind of stop traffic. So I was like, all right, well, my boys done going, so let me go ahead. So as they shoot past, I was like, all right, I'll get ready to pretty much catch up, and I just get ready to really get into the bike, and before I know it, I just felt impact. And from like my right side, and from what I remember, when the bike crashed into me, I just kind of remember looking over, and I couldn't even see the rider of the bike anymore. I just see their bike kind of crashed, and my bike starts accelerating. So in my mind,
it was another motorcycle.
It was another motorcycle. Yeah. Okay. And I'm thinking that, okay, maybe this bike probably jammed into the throttle. So now we're just full speed ahead, me and that bike. So eventually I'm like, all right, well, we got to go down. So kind of roll off to the left, and then the bike hits the ground, and man, I just started sliding. I slid for what seemed like it was forever. I'm just like on my left side, the bike's right here on my left side, and it's kind of just dragging me, and I'm just kind of looking up at the time.
You kind of bailed out, like you were like stuck with the other bike, and you're like, crap, I gotta just get off this thing, and so you bail out.
That's
okay.
Right.
Wow, so, that's heavy.
The things that I noticed at that time is I'm starting to like see all of these sparks. I'm seeing a bunch of smoke, bunch of sparks, smelling a bunch of different things. What I didn't know is that somehow when I went down, that gas tank ended up puncturing. So now I'm sliding. I got this fuel getting on me. I didn't even recognize that the fuel was getting on me, and I can see all of these sparks, and then I could see flames like poof, poof, poof. And I don't know, in that moment, for some odd reason, the only thing that I thought to do, seeing all the sparks, was I had a gun on my right side. I just wanted to get it away from me. So I couldn't even properly unhost it. I think I just grabbed it, and it just ended up just getting away from me, kind of just sliding. And next thing I know, the bike was blowing up. So I remember just kind of like I don't even remember the explosion. I just remember my boy Matt and Phil telling me, man, we looked backwards and all we seen was this big mushroom cloud. So I just remember I don't remember being on fire. I could just remember the sound of it. It just sounds like a bunch of wind and gust, and after that.
What kind of gear were you, like, presumably you're wearing some kind of motorcycle gear, like, and we think about it from a protection standpoint, but now all that gear is presumably doused in gasoline. What were you wearing, and how did that play into, the next steps?
I have on blue jeans. I have on leather boots. Polo boots, leather polo boots, and then I have on gloves with like the hard knuckles. But the pads that I'm wearing a full padded suit. So it's like mesh, but it's all these plastic pads, looking like some type of RoboCop,
Right.
So initially, as I'm sliding, I'm pretty much fine. The jeans, they some good pair of jeans. So the jeans are fine. I'm sliding on the plastic. The plastic's fine at the time. I still got those boots in there. I wear those boots out to date night. They are perfect, and then they were like a light skin, leather and suede. They don't have a scratch on them. However, although I was protected from the slide, that mesh and plastic and fire, my body was engulfed in flames. So when I woke up in the hospital and, once I really understand what went on, they tell me that my body is over 80% burned. So I actually was given everything that I had on, from that accident, and there's nothing from the pads. All of that is just melted. It's just mush, just goo. I got one glove. The right glove survived. The left glove was burnt to a crisp. That's why I ended up losing my left hand. But yeah, 80% burns. In the middle, before the coma happened, the only thing I remember in between the crash, the blowing up, and waking up from the coma was a brief conversation twice. One conversation when I'm in the back of the ambulance. I don't know what's going on. I just hear the words, "We lost you there, but you're strong. Stay with us." And then I remember fading again. Wow. And then the second thing I remember is hearing my mom talk. And I don't remember responding back to her, but my mom tells me that I told her, "Oh, Mom, I'm gonna be all right. They're just gonna throw some Band-Aids on me and I'll be right out." And then next thing
when you say you remember them saying that they lost you, did you pass and then come back as part of this?
So somewhere in between that, being put into the ambulance and making my way onto Grady, I didn't make it. And then they ended up reviving me. And then as I'm being wheeled in, someone gets my phone and was able to call my mom. As I'm getting wheeled in, my mom's pretty much already at the hospital. They're wheeling me past her, and I'm telling her, like, they gotta, get me into immediate surgery. But I was put into a induced coma and then wake up 2 months later.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that. We wanted to ask you about that, but so crash, land on your left side.
Mm-hmm.
Everything catches on fire. You're basically in the middle of an explosion, essentially, or like a fire. Yeah. You go into the ambulance, and you end up in a coma, and you wake up 2 months later. Yeah. What are the extent of the injuries? I don't know, either like just afterward or like when you wake up. What do you understand the extent of the injuries are? You said you lost your left hand. And that was because of the fire or because of impact and fire, or
that was from the fire. So like I said, I'm over 80% of my body is 30-degree burns from about 6 inches on my left arm under the elbow. 6 inches down is what they call 4th-degree burns, which I didn't even learn about in school. So 4th-degree burns is kind of when it burns through everything. So the way my doctor explained it to me is that she took a probe and she kind of just started at like fingertips and just kept poking until she could find any live tissue that wasn't completely burnt through. And thanks to my mom, my mom kind of told, the way my doctor explained it to my mom was that, hey, we got to make a decision to take this arm. She was like, if it's up to me, so I started the shoulder. And she was like, the reason she wanted to do that is because she felt like if she started anywhere below, if she started anywhere below that burnt tissue, it would just keep going up. And then with it being on my left side, it would get to my heart. And the way she explained it to my mom, for my mom to make decisions, she said, I could leave as much as possible or leave it there, and you can see if he survives 8 days, or I can cut off as much as I can, and you can see if he survives another 80 years. It's up to you. So my mom ultimately made that decision to just go ahead and take off my arm. And I don't even realize this until maybe about 2 weeks out of being out of a coma. And
you're in the coma this whole time, right?
So I don't make any of these decisions. I don't.
And you said, sorry to stop you again, but you said it was a medically induced coma, and that was because the burns were so bad. Is that correct?
Because the burns are so bad. Correct.
Copy.
So,
Okay.
And I don't notice because once I do wake out of a coma, I can't even talk. I got these trachs and stuff that's lodged inside of my throat. So it's nothing I can say. I can't, I can barely do anything at this point. I don't remember what happened to me. I have no knowledge of recollection of anything. So I'm just confused. Every day I'm just looking at these people look at me and talk and say things and, not be able to say anything back to them. I can barely move my head, to shake or nod or anything. So one day my mom's just in there and she's just like, that was the hardest decision I ever had to make. And I'm sitting here like, what is this lady talking about? And she was just
oh
like,
my gosh,
can you move it? And I'm like, move what? So then she's all I see is white every day. And she tries to pull the cover off of me. And she's like, see if you can pick up your arm. So I pick up my right arm. She's like, okay, well, can you pick up the other arm? And I try to pick up the left arm. Then she untucks it a little bit more and I pick it up. And then I noticed two things. I was like, man, this arm is light. And then two, I'm like, where's the rest of it? Like, it's gone. The whole left arm from elbow down is gone. So, at that time, like I said, I can't talk. So my only response is I remember feeling the, tears running from my eyes. Like, what happened? What happened? Wow. It's crazy.
Jay, so, okay. First of all, wow.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. I'm sure you talked about it before, but like it's a really heavy conversation. So thanks for sharing that with us. I appreciate it.
Yep.
So let's get into you're coming out of it, right? What, like, walk us through the process, because I know that you lost your arm, but then you also were told, I believe, that you were never going to walk again.
That's correct.
So like, when did you start coming to, and what was your attitude as you were starting to understand the impact of your injuries? And then let's kind of shift into the recovery process and how you got to where you're at today.
Okay. So after that coma, the first thing, for me to even remember what happened to me, I just started searching hashtags. There was hashtags in my name. Some was hashtag Jalen Strong, hashtag pulled through Jalen. So I was just searching all of these hashtags, and I realized a couple things. A lot of my family members and friends, a lot of them didn't even think that I survived because my doctors were telling me there's no way he's going to pull out of this. Then it went from there's no way he's going to pull out of this. The burns are too deep. The injuries are too, they're too severe, to, okay, now he's in the coma. It's all up to him. We can't, if he comes out, it's on him. He has to fight. And then now, so a lot of these people not hearing from me or anything about me for too much, they're thinking I'm gone, So I'm looking at all of these hashtags, and then I finally come across this video, and this video is me in my accident. And the moment that somebody else posted the video of you. Yep. And it's not of the accident. It's the damage of the accident. So you see me in my body and my bike on fire. And the moment that I see just a piece of this video, I don't remember looking at the rest of the video. The moment I see the bike on fire, I just have this flashback. And the whole day, the whole accident, everything replays down from the crash to the slide to the waking up, everything. I got all of my memory back right in that moment. So it was unreal, right? So now I'm in this hospital, and it's about maybe a month after coming out of a coma. Now they're pulling out the trach, and I'm able to talk, and the first question, because this is 2016, so my accident happened in September, so I'm like,
oh no,
who's the president?
Who's president? Right? Wow,
who's president?
Interesting.
Yeah, and then secondly,
man.
I'm looking at my injuries and stuff, and wound care was rough. Every day that I was in wound care, I got all of these wounds. It's unrealistic. The first thing I remember them telling me is that they would weigh everything on the bed and subtract the sheets and stuff like that. And they had told me that I gained weight, and I was now up to 111 pounds. And before this accident, and I was
how tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
Okay.
So I was 111 pounds, and I was 150 prior to the accident. So I am completely skin and bones. I've been working on fitness, and I wrestled 4 years to put on all this muscle, and I don't have any of it. I'm just literally skin and bones.
And they said you were up to 111 pounds.
I gained up to 111 pounds, right? So
and
now,
for anyone that's not looked at your Instagram page, like you're a muscular individual. Like you clearly spend time in the gym.
Yeah, I done got all that back plus more. So I've been a lucky person. So this is new to me, and now I'm looking at my body, and I'm seeing how, like, my ankle and my thigh was about the same girth. So I'm losing all hope at this point. I'm like, man, It's no way that I'm gonna come out of this. Like, I was just looking at all the blood that I was losing every day. They would come in there and be scrubbing wounds. I'd be in so much pain. I didn't see an end to it. Like, I had wound care every single day, and this is the most excruciating pain. So
even like, this is now what, 3 months after the accident?
Yeah, from 3 months to 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, I'm going through wound care and it's not, to me, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. I'm just looking at all this blood every day, and I'm like, this is not natural. And
this is 80% of your body is essentially a wound.
Yep. And then from this time, just from the time of me being admitted into the hospital until the time that I've come out of the coma, I've already gone through 14 surgeries. 14. By the time I make it out of the hospital, which is 14 months later, I had a total of 38 surgeries. Most of those being skin grafts of amputation and stuff like that. So, it was just those initial months were so rough for just of so many different infections and burn. It was horrible, So I got into a really, really depressed state, and I just, like I said, I didn't see an end coming anytime soon. And one day, I have these. I'm in the military. They decided to not discharge me yet. They're kind of coming in, and they're like, right, Jay, you're gonna make it out of this, man. Like, you're gonna get back. You're gonna be stronger. We're gonna throw a prosthetic on you. You're gonna be out there outrunning us like you've done in the past, man. So, what I'm saying, just stay strong. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, these people are not going to keep me in the military, but just the slimmest hope that I can stay in the military, I'm like, all right, let me try to do something. Let me try to do something with my life, So
did the military's faith in you in that moment help you with the depression that you were struggling with?
Yeah. So the military definitely had a play in that. The other part of it, because I got so depressed at one point in time that I didn't want to talk to not one single human being. I don't care who it was. I was calling the police on my doctors. Like, it was rough. Like, I was really depressed. And one day, the thing that actually flipped the switch from me is they brought in, the door open, and a dog came in. And this dog walks into the hospital. And I'm thinking that, one, I'm on the 3rd floor. Everybody at this point that comes into my room, they look like astronauts. Like, they got all of this stuff on, face covered, hands covered, because I'm so easy to get any affection, at the slightest. And now I'm seeing this dog come in. I'm like, how is this even possible, for them to bring a dog in and all of these, and when the dog came in, unlike what I can see in my friends and my family faces, like, they no longer seeing the same person. Like, they would come in and I can see in their face, like, yeah, this dude, like, I'm messed up. I don't have any mirrors. I can't get up. I can't walk to the bathroom. It's been months since I've been able to do any of this, but I can see in their face that I just didn't look good. However, when this dog came in, this dog ears was perked up, its tail was wagging, it was trying everything in its power to get to me. And I'm sitting here like, man, you can't fake that. Like, a dog can't fake its expressions, So that was true. And when I seen that, I was just like, it's something out there that wants me, what I'm saying, to pull through this.
So that like made you feel like a human again. Definitely. To some extent, because the dog was like, I recognize this human, and like, I want to play with them or make them happy or something like that.
Definitely. So
that's crazy. Wow.
The military plus some dog, they dog. Look, then they started catching on. Like, they was like, did you see how this man responded to that dog? And then they just started like clockwork. And my whole demeanor changed.
Was it always dogs, or like were there other service animals?
It was definitely all dogs. So the first dog that just passed away a couple months ago. The sweetest dog ever. The dog name, it was a Basset Hound named Peaches. Like that was the first dog. There was a blue nose pit bull that came by that was named Pig. They had a rotation of dogs that would come visit.
That's
me.
amazing.
Wow. And then they decided, hey, let's tell this guy that we can get him his own service dog. And once they told me that, man, I was like, go ahead and put a trapeze bar over this bed. Let's see if I can bust out a couple pull-ups. You know what I'm saying? One arm. I went from denying and fighting those people for wound care. Like I would push it off, knowing that I need it, and it's like, you know, imperative that I get wound care or it could be detrimental to my life. I would push it off, hoping that they would just not do it that day, you know, because I'm fighting them so long. To the point, hey, y'all come in here and y'all get me done first. I don't care who's on y'all list. Get me done first so that when these dogs come, I'm available. Because I missed one day because I was in wound care. I don't know, wound care, and I came back. Like, where the dogs? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. They left. Your wound care took so long. And I'm like, never again. Not gonna happen.
So that's amazing. So we have the dog. We have the dogs. They have changed your outlook. You know, now all of a sudden you're ready to fight. You want to come back. You're gonna walk again. You're gonna get out there. You're doing one arm pull-ups. Walk us through that transition from you're getting through wound care, but now you're also more determined to get back to your regular life. And what did that take for you to accomplish?
Yeah. So now I have this spark that, hey, you know what I'm saying? I can pull through this. Now, you know, the pain it doesn't hurt as much. Like it's tolerable and I can do things now. So out of nowhere, you know, time seems to be going by a little faster. And one day they come in and was like, hey, we need you to start looking at these rehabs because it's time for you to get out of here. And I'm like, what? Like, I still can't walk, but I'm like, I'm leaving. They was like, yeah, you know, the service dog's got to go somewhere. So I'm like, okay. So, you know, I go through these pamphlets and then I finally pick on which rehabilitation center I'm gonna go to. Now with my insurance, I didn't know, but the rehabilitation center is only for 2 weeks. So I got 14 days, you know, to do whatever rehabbing it is. So, you know, I get loaded. I'm still in the bed. They transport me in the bed from the bed to the rehabilitation center. They were playing Eye of a Tiger over the intercom. I've been there 14 months. I've not heard anything other than, you know, cold blues and, you know, stuff like that over here in come. Now they're playing Eye of a Tiger as I'm leaving out. I get to this rehabilitation center and this lady, she sees me and she asks me like, what are my goals? And then I tell her I want to walk out of here. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, according to your chart, you know, you probably won't ever walk again. You're gonna, you know, get to a step pivot, you know. And I'm seeing her like step pivot, and then in my head I'm like, nah, how I'm gonna ride a motorcycle if I can't walk, you know? So, you know, at that point,
even at that point, you were thinking about getting back on a motorcycle.
Oh, even when I was in the hospital, you know, it was some family members that was just like, oh, you know, them days of riding was over with, and I was just like, well, you see, this one got 3 wheels. I was like, I don't really gotta balance it, and they just wasn't trying to hear that right there, you know.
They probably didn't want to hear that. Right?
But man, I had back then I had an album saved. I was screenshotting all kind of stuff. I was like, you know, it's either gonna be a 3-wheel, it's gonna be a trike, it's gonna be a Can-Am, something, you know. But we gonna still catch that win, you know.
Was getting back onto a bike part of the inspiration for, oh, I'm definitely gonna walk again? Like, was that part of your inspiration as you're entering rehab?
Definitely, because, you know, I think at that time, a lot of the thing that I didn't like the most is a lot of people wanted to blame the bike, right? However, right across from me, I'm not going to say any names, but right across from me was a patient who was in a F-250. And I'm talking about the souped up F-250. And he had 2 passengers in his backseat. And he just so happened to fall asleep at the wheel and went across the median and crashed into a car that had 2 college students traveling to college. Everybody but him died. That F-250, the other car, all of it caught on fire, and he just so happened to be pulled out by the firemen when they got there. And I say that to say, you know, you know, I know bikes are dangerous, but it could happen to anybody. You know, it doesn't just, you know, you don't have to just blame the bike. It was just an accident. You know, had the bike not blown up or caught fire, I could have probably gotten up and walked away from it. You know. So I didn't like that whole persona of, you know, the bike did this to you. Right. You know, it's just, you know, accidents happen. So, I didn't, and I just remember the joy. And a lot of people will never understand this feeling unless they've been, on a bike. You don't understand that feeling of freedom, that feeling of catching the wind. And I wasn't gonna let that go. So, that was always in my head. Little did they know, I had to convince a lot of people, but that was always a goal of mine.
So I don't want to blow past I mean, your story is fascinating and obviously it's gruesome and difficult but it's amazing also. And I don't want to blow past you learning how to walk again, and sort of minimize that at all. But I'm curious, I guess once I don't know, when you did start walking, was that in that 14-day period? Like
no.
14 days later, did you?
So I didn't get to it. That first physical therapist, she survived not even 24 hours. When she told me that I wasn't going to walk again, and then the best thing that I was get to is a step pivot, I couldn't believe that. And I was just like, nah, that's not what this story is going to end, So, when she came in and the next day, she had told me her plan, that night. She was just like, well, we want to be able to make sure that you can kind of like step pivot, get into the wheelchair, then kind of wash yourself, put your clothes on, brush your teeth. Those are the goals that we have since you're here for 2 weeks. And in my mind, I was just like, I'm not spending 2 weeks learning to put on the clothes, So now you're telling me that I'm not going to walk again. So I can't even go to sleep. So I put it in my mind, everything that she wanted to do in that 2 weeks, I did that night. I got up and I beat my butt to drag myself into that wheelchair. And I rolled into the shower. I let the water hit me, didn't really shower, but I let that water hit me and I rolled back, dropped myself off. I brushed my teeth and then I scrambled to put those clothes on, and I parked that wheelchair right in front of the door. And I was just waiting, when she came in, I'm thinking, all right, well, she's going to be happy for me, and she was just like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know nobody's been in here. And I was like, nobody's been in here. And she's just like, so how did you get into that chair? And I was like, I got in the chair. I put my clothes on. I brushed my teeth. I already took my shower, and now I'm in the chair, and I want to, move past this. And she's just like, oh, you're a fall casualty. I could have been in trouble. That's not what you're supposed to do. So immediately I cut that off, and I was like, all right, y'all got to get the doctor in here because it's not going to work, So
you didn't like her vibe. She wasn't on your same wavelength, right?
No, you're like, you have 13 days left. You're going to make the most out of this as possible. Yeah.
This is day zero. You know what I'm saying? So they got me a new PT, and she told me, she was like, what is it that you want to do? And I was like, I want to walk out of here. And she was like, we're going to make that happen, And I don't know if it was real motivation or fake motivation, but it's what I needed, So they would put me in these different contractions, because the problem being is the reason, and a lot of people don't understand this, the reason that I can't walk is not because I had some like leg injury or I broke my legs or I had a spine injury. I couldn't walk because my legs were burnt so bad that they just drew up. Like all the skin is super tight and it can't stretch, So now in order for me to walk, I literally have to break all of that tissue. It's excruciating, but
for the muscles to grow.
Yes. I have the muscles that are stuck like this. I now have to break it. And every day that I'm trying to extend it, it's just more and more blood, more and more. It's ugly. It's definitely an ugly process, and it's very painful. But this is what I had to do, So I didn't really get to a point of walking, but I was on this little pushing thing that they didn't even want me to have because they thought they would get away from me. They was trying to get me to use this cane, but I was trying to tell them, man, I don't know why, but missing a left hand, I just felt like my equilibrium was off and I couldn't balance on that cane. But I was like, if y'all could just give me something that I could put this nub on and then use my other hand, to kind of, I do it. And she let me finally, she let me use it, and I took off. I took off of that thing, but my feet were still kind of messed up. I couldn't even get the heel of my foot planted on the ground. So, but
wow.
I was making progress. So,
and you didn't have a prosthetic arm at this point. You were just,
I probably didn't have a prosthetic arm until maybe another year after making it out of the rehabilitation center, And once I got home, like I said, I couldn't walk, but it was all about setting small goals. So I'm sitting in that bed, and my sister's coming in, changing my little pee thing. And I'm like, this got to stop. You know what I'm saying? I feel bad for her. So, you know, I was like, today I got to make it to this couch, which is right there next to my bed. And then I was like, the next day I got to try to make it from that couch to the bathroom. Unfortunately, I'm up 2 flights of stairs. So if I could just make it down them stairs, I made it down the stairs one day, and then I called my sister like, all right, you got to come pick me up, take me back to the room, because it's all I got for today, you know.
You can go downstairs, you just couldn't make it back up the stairs.
Make it back up the stairs. Then that was the next go. All right, I can make it down and somehow shimmy back up. And then after that, the next thing was like, if I could just make it out there to that car. Once I made it out to that car, I was gone.
Jay, what was your like, help us understand the actual timeline here from accident to coma through your walk. You're finally walking again. You're in the gym, you're rebuilding. So what was the timeline from the accident to when you felt you were, you know, back able to start the healing process in full?
Okay, so that the military sped that timeline up for me, because initially, like, here it is, 14 months later, I'm in a rehabilitation center. I get out of that rehabilitation center late October, you know, so this is October of 2017. Does that sound about right? I think, October 2017, I'm out of the rehabilitation center. Then we have one of our military members that ends up committing suicide after coming back from deployment. And my chaplain, who was also he was a major in the military, he calls me. He's like, hey, I know we said that, you know, we discussed you know, coming back, taking a little break, but I really feel like that if your unit sees your face, that'll be a big, huge boost in morale that we would need right now. So now, instead of me going back to the military, like, you know, around February, that what we discussed, it's December. And I done drove there, but I got 2 of my closest military friends who's putting me in a rolling chair, taking me up an elevator, and they're pushing me around drill, you know, all day. And this is December. January comes and same thing's happening. February comes and I'm now kind of trying to use this little rolling pushing thing that I was still telling you guys about. And then March, now I'm at drill, but I'm trying to get around without it. So I'm like taking a couple steps and leaning on something. And then unfortunately, April, you know, my commander comes to me and she's like, I really hate to tell you this. She's like, and don't be mad at me. She's like, we need you to do a PT test. It doesn't have to count. She's like, it doesn't have to count. We just want to see who you are. And she was just like, I promise you, it won't count against you. However, if you pass it, you know what I'm saying, we're going to use it, you know. So the only thing that I'm not required to do in this PT test, because at the time it's only push-up, sit-ups, run, is the push-up, because I have no prosthetic. So they want me to just do the sit-up, and then they want me to do the 2-mile run. I ended up breaking the sit-up record that we have for that unit. I did 118 sit-ups in 2 minutes, you know what I'm saying? So that's just 2 sit-ups shy of 1 per second, you know? And that's because I was training sit-ups in that hospital bed, you know? So it's really hard to sit up.
Wow.
However, the run, I didn't pass the run. I got my just as if I have to do wound care myself, you know, every day or every other day. So I got my legs are heavily bandaged, and I still can't get that heel of my foot to fully sit on the ground. But I was like, all right, y'all want me to do this 2 mile, I'm gonna do it. So man, I'm only about 2 laps in, and those bandages that were whitish brown are now bloody red. And they're seeing this, and I'm just doing this thing that's like, it's not a run, but it's not really a walk. It's just ass and elbows. And they're walking next to me like, Rich, you can stop. We're sorry. Like, don't go any farther. This don't look good. Your bandages. And I'm like, no, I got to finish. I can't stop. Man. And they was like, Rich, you have nothing to prove with us, bro. You're good. And I was like, I'm going to finish, you know? So the total time that I'm allowed is like 16 minutes and 38 seconds. I probably finished in like 19 minutes, which is, unfortunately, at the time, I didn't see it. I've never failed a PT test in my life. You know, I've always been a PT stud, but I'm like, dang, I failed and I'm down. And then, you know, one of my people come to me and tell me, it's like, hey, do you know that you finished before one of the walkers? Now, the walkers have a longer period of time to do it, but the only thing to it is you can't run. So I did kind of run, so it can't count as a walking PT test, but I came in before some of the walkers in 19 minutes. So when they seen that, again, I was down, but later on that day, I got generals giving me coins like 118 sit-ups. In my mind, I'm like, but I felt the run, but they like, we can't believe you did that. So then my leadership gets with me and they're like, if we bring you back in 2 months, you think you can, better your time? And I'm like, let's go for it. So now that band-aid is ripped off, so I'm like, hey, I went out there and I did 2 miles. It hurt, but that's pretty much the worst that can happen. So I come back in 2 months and I pass it by literally a fraction of a second, and then they was like,
Wow.
hey, in a couple months, we're going to send you to school to reclass. And once I got to that school, that's when my whole mindset changed. Now I'm somewhere that's away from home. I don't know anybody here. I'm gone for 7 months. I don't have no distractions. I don't turn off my phone. I'm like, I'm not 7 months, 7 weeks, but these 7 weeks, I'm going to train. So I ran every day. I ran with weighted vest on. I was doing a bunch of stretching. I invented this little strap thing to hook them to the bar. I'm doing pull-ups with it, so I'm doing 1-arm push-ups. I'm getting it in. And that 7 weeks, man, I came back a beast. So I broke a previous running record that I had. I did a 2-mile run and it was like 12 minutes and 20 something seconds, which is the fastest time that I've ever ran. So it was nice. And once
you went from being told that you were not going to walk again and you're going to pivot turn to breaking your own personal best.
Breaking my own personal best. Yeah. And once what that did for me is coming back and beating everybody else's scores and beating my own score, that kind of changed my mindset. I was like, man, I can do everything. I was like, it's literally nothing that I'm not going to be able to do. So I started initially I wasn't looking right at motorcycles because the problem is that I'm happy, what I'm saying? Everything's going well. I'm buying Jeeps. I'm riding my Jeeps, which is another one of my dream cars that I have, and everything's fine. Everything's going well. I'm back to walking. I'm back to running, But the problem is that when I'm riding my Jeep, and even though I got all the doors off and the top off and I'm feeling that wind, the moment I'm driving the Jeep, minding my business, and that bike passes me, I'm still having this feeling of something being incomplete. And I'm like, I got to get out there, man. I would literally lose my mind. If I see a pack of bikes, if I see one fly past me, if I see one splitting anything, I'm disturbed. And I'm like, I gotta do it. So this is probably, now we're looking at 2018 and let's see. Yeah, about 2018, I'm buying a Riker, which is a Can-Am, and you don't need no clutch or nothing, but I'm now, it's a motorcycle technically, Now I hear riding the Riker again. I got this Predator helmet. It's sitting up there. It's got the little dreads on it. I'm out there, but in my mind, I'm still asking myself, can I keep up with those bikes? So one day I'm in traffic and this bike comes zooming past me and I'm on a Riker and I was like, it's go time. Here we go. So he's zipping through traffic. I'm zipping through traffic. I'm trying to keep up with him. Finally, traffic starts to slow down because there's a couple highways merging, and I get really close to him. And I'm sitting here thinking hey, I don't think I did that bad. Once I get really close to him and I see that back tire and I see that back tire is only this big, I'm like, I was like, this got to be a 250. I was like, I did all that work, to keep up with the 250. So I was just like, hey, I got to find a way to get on this bike.
Did you have
what was ultimately ultimately the transition back into bike? Because you've ridden a motorcycle now at this point, right?
Yep.
So it was 3.5, 4 years, it sounds like, before you got on a 3-wheeler and rode to feel the wind in your face and and get some of the feeling back. But then how long after that did you?
What was the process for getting back on actual 2 wheels?
Yeah.
So the only thing that's keeping me off now, because the only reason I bought this Riker is because I can't figure out a way of how I'm gonna do this clutch, this clutch thing. And I'm not. Some people brought the ideal out of automatic bike, but I wasn't hearing that. And the only reason being is because it's just something about revving. I'm just in my mind how do you rev an automatic bike without putting it in neutral? You know what I'm saying? So I don't really, that doesn't really, fancy me, and now this infamous Edgewood, I'm now back out on Edgewood. And I'm out there. I don't park my Jeep down the street, but I'm out here where the bikers are, and it's a group of bikes. And now I'm sitting on my buddy's bike, right? And I'm sitting on his bike, and believe it or not, this guy, we just gonna say he's a homeless guy. This homeless guy is walking by. He's talking loud, just, you know, doing what he does. And he comes by and he's just like, hey, man, you got a nice bike. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, you know, and he's just like, he started asking me questions about the bike. And I finally say, man, it's not my bike. And he's like, oh, it's not your bike? You sitting on it? I'm like, no, it's not my bike. He's like, which one your bike? And I'm like, none of these are my bike. He's like, where's your bike? And I was like, I don't got a bike. I show him my hand, my prosthetic, and I show him, I'm like, he's like, oh man. Then he's trying to give me his backstory about what happened to his band hand. And then he's just like, oh, that don't mean you can't ride no bike, man. And he's just like, you can get it. I said, look, man, I don't know why I'm giving him my life story, but I'm telling him I already done did the research. These people done throw all these ridiculous prices at me. I don't went to different Harley dealerships, bike dealerships. It's like, yeah, everybody's throwing me these ridiculous prices. Like, yeah, maybe for $8,000 we can do like a foot clutch, or, you know, they just doing all this weird, extravagant stuff. And I'm like, and then he's like, excuse my language, but these were his exact words. He said, man, all you gotta do, you take that clutch and you put that motherfucker on the other side. And I was just like, hey, man, it's not that simple. And he's just like, listen to me, nephew. You take that clutch, you flip that motherfucker over, and you put it on the other side. And he said, you just have to ride like that. And I'm like, man, it doesn't work. Like, as I'm doing that, my homeboy, whose bike it is looking, and he's like, he done took out his little pocket knife, he undoing, and he's now got the clutch in his hand. He like
at that time, like right in the moment. Okay.
At the time.
He just like flipped it over to the other handlebar.
He's like, bro, it's literally just the wire. He's like, it's the other side. It's the same thing. And I was like, don't tell me that, man. Don't, please don't. So I tell him, like, we got to leave now. Like, yeah, I will follow you. You follow me. We're going to go to your house. So we shoot off. We go to his house, and he takes his little clutch off. He flip it to the other side. He tighten it down. And I'm just trying to figure it out. So I keep stalling. But finally I get that friction zone.
Because presumably you're trying to use the throttle. For those listening, you're trying to use the throttle and the clutch with the same hand.
With the same hand, right. So I'm in the neighborhood, and I don't have the right prosthetic at the time. I just got this little thing. So I'm just like pushing. I'm just pushing because I don't have one that can hold on. So I'm just pushing the throttle. But I end up doing like a little small loop in the cul-de-sac. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, this is it. Like, I was like, man, this didn't cost no money. So I finally go to this guy, and this dude named JD. And the crazy thing about it is I'm telling him this idea, and he's like, hey man, he's like, I've been had bikes set up like that. He's like, I'm a stunt rider. He's like, you know how many times we put front brakes, back brakes, all on the front of the handlebars? He's like,
right.
It's too easy. So he's like, I was like, what I need? He's like, man, I ride 636. He's like, that's the ultimate stunt bike. Just get you a 636. He's like, man, we'll get you some risers, and, you know, and you just throw that clutch on there. I get you a shorty clutch, so it, you know, you'll have room over the front brake. He said, if you can learn to ride like that, you'd be good.
So you didn't move the front brake to the left-hand side. You
Nope.
basically had two controls on the right-hand side.
I have my clutch, and it's a shorty clutch. I just moved the switch, or like this, you know, the switch is right next to the assembly of the clutch. I mean, the assembly of the throttle. I moved it over, and well, no, I kept it there, but I put the clutch on the other side of the switch so that it's a little shorter. So the clutch ends, and then you still got the full front brake under it. So essentially,
Right.
these two fingers hit the first two fingers hit the clutch, and then the last two fingers hit the brake, and then I still
Wow.
throttle. So I had to learn how to like slowly clutch while giving it throttle. And now, man, I rode today. So if the sun is in the air, and even if it is, right, as long as it's not gonna be like pouring down, I'm taking the bike 10 times out of 10, taking the bike. So I've been ever since then, been back on the bike. And
well, I would say one of the questions that we had for Joe had an interesting story where he kind of promised his wife that he wasn't going to ride anymore, and then kind of bought a motorcycle and forgot to ask for permission first. Did you have, like you mentioned, your mom and your sister? How did your family take to you getting back on a bike? Were they supportive of it? Did they know that it was important to you, or did you have to try and explain to them, hey, I think I'm going to do this again?
To be honest, the only person's approval that I was looking for was my nana, which is my mother's mother. She was really the only person that you remember when I tell you that I used to always see my dad's helmet, but I never seen the bike? The reason for that is because his mother, who was my grandmother, she would have a heart attack just knowing we ride bikes, So when the fact that I even had that accident, he doesn't even tell her that he rides. So she's the only person in my whole family that doesn't know that I ride. And I refuse to add her on Facebook, on Instagram. Every time she's like, baby, isn't this you? I'm like, Grandma, I don't know what's going on. Every time I accept it, it just don't work, But once my nana came to the ideal that, hey,
and you have like 140,000 followers on Instagram, but your grandmother is not one of them.
And see, the thing is that's how I really love my family, because even those really close to her who've been on the page, they know not to say anything, so nobody's told her, and that was great because she almost lost it when she found out one day that I was riding a 4-wheeler. She was just like, now, you know what that bike did to you now. I'm like, I understand, Grandma. I know. I was like, I was riding for a friend. I was trying to get somewhere, But yeah, so they don't tell her. But once my nana came to the realization that, hey, you could literally you could get hurt doing anything. You could live a perfectly good life, and then you could step wrong coming out your shower and fall on the side of your thing and break your back. Anything can happen. The moral of it is, if it's not your time, it's not your time. And I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to fault the bike. I've made a full recovery. I am now in the best condition, physical condition, healthy condition, like that I've ever been in my life. And that's a joy that I have. Like, it's people have car accidents all the time, that don't stop them from riding. Like, okay, I'm never going to ride again. I'm get an Uber. No, you know what I'm saying? You can't live your life in fear, so you gotta, I would rather die, with my memories than to die with regrets, so, and if I didn't ride that bike, and on top of that, the one thing, even if I came to a time that I ever said, hey, I've done enough riding, I'm cool. Cause you have everybody has the right to make that decision. Mm-hmm. But if I make that decision, I want it to be of my own choice. I want it to be my own decision. I don't want to not be able to ride because somebody else, had a bad day and they lost control and then they took that from me, So that was one thing I couldn't live with. I could probably live with not riding again, but I can't live with doing something I enjoy doing and then not being able to do it because somebody else took that opportunity from me, So, right. If I ever stop riding it, to be on my own. Now, do I think so? Nah, not really, but
Yeah. So on the topic of not blaming the bike, do you have any, like, I don't know, do you feel like obviously the way the motorcycle setup has changed because you have, you have one hand and you work the clutch with your right and so on and so forth. But I mean, sort of like emotionally, do you feel like do you ride differently now? Do you feel like, I don't know, maybe it's like maybe this is a dumb question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you feel like you learned something from your motorcycle experience before your accident? Like, are there things now that you're like more careful with, or do you just feel like what happened and onward and upward?
At that time, I felt like I was really good. I was really good at that time of watching all the cagers around me. I would pay attention to every car. My thing, and I've always rode like this, and I always ride like this now. I don't put it past any car. I expect every car to lane change in front of me. I expect every car to pull out in front of me. I don't expect any car to see me. And I've always rode like that. And I felt like that is what has kept me safe for so long. The thing that at that time that I never thought to pay attention to or never thought to care about, I never thought to think about the experience of other riders. For some odd reason, when I ride with them, I felt safe. Like, hey, they riding their bike. They know what they're doing because I know what I'm doing. I never thought to be cautious of, other riders. Now, if I'm riding with a group of people, I always go to them and I tell them, hey, ride your own ride, regardless of what you see me or my buddy or this guy does, because what we learned about that guy is it wasn't his bike. He didn't have a motorcycle license. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have motorcycle insurance. Like, he was just out there on this bike was a R3 or a 250. It was either it was a smaller bike. And
the one that hit you?
The one that took me out. They told me that the bike, and I've never heard this before, but this R3 or 250 had a power commander on it. It had, LED lights on it. It was all done up, but the guy just didn't have no experience. So he see everybody else, and he's just trying to ride it hard, and he loses control, not even, 2 minutes into the ride,
Right.
So once I learned that, now I realize, so in the beginning, when I used to ride with other people, I'd be like, hey man, I got the back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna pull up, and I did that. I rode that, and still now I get a little cautious. I'll pay attention to how other guys are riding, and if it looks like it's getting a little bit too chaotic, I'll fall back to the back. You know what I'm saying? And I'll pull up the rear. But other than that, you know what I'm saying, I don't have any no fear, because like I said, a lot of people think that when they hear you using an accident, they think one or two things. Either one, somebody pulled out in front of you, or two, you was out there riding crazy. For me, it was neither. I wasn't out there riding crazy, at least not yet. And nobody pulled out in front of me. It was just another guy who lost control, and sometimes it happens, and I can't really fault that guy. This stuff happens sometimes. But
Jay,
like
I know we got turned on to your story through Joe and his work at the Ride Again Foundation.
Yes, sir.
As you're kind of thinking about other people that might be in a similar situation to you, and they're maybe in a dark spot, and they don't have the same kind of support network that you had, or the same kind of inspiration, whether it's, the support animals or the military, how has the work that Joe's been doing, how does that serve as an inspiration for people like yourself or other riders that might be going through a similar recovery process?
Well, what I like about Joe and what he's doing, and I think what helps a lot of riders, is that he changes that thought process. A lot of people, and even me at one point, when things happen to us, the first thing we think is, oh, it's over. You know what I'm saying? Like, this will never be the same again, or I can't do this, I can't do that. And Joe, what he's doing with his Ride Again Foundation is showing people that there is a way, there is a possibility. There are, things out here. There are adaptive ways. And a lot of people just don't know that. A lot of people, like I said, they just how it was for me, they think that once you get into that situation that, that's it. And it's not, so just showing people, either if it's not through example, just like physically, he physically puts these people on bikes and show them, like, hey, these are the capabilities out for you. Just giving those people the inspiration, that's inspiring just to see. A lot of people, I go places and even I inspire the able body. So I know the people that aren't able, are inspired by it. But I pull up and guys be like, man, you riding. Then they look at me like, oh, wow, whoa. Like, yeah. It just hits them and catches them off guard, So, I just like he's doing, and I'm proud that he's doing it, but he's showing people that there is a way, what I'm saying? It is, that you don't ever just give up, especially if it's something that you love doing, continue to find a way to do it. And he's showing those people that it's possible.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because, your story was, it got intense and it got dark, but I think my biggest takeaway here, and I kind of got a little bit, choked up inside when you're telling it, was the joy that came back to you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about discovering how you could flip the clutch over, and all of a sudden this opens up this new world to you, and you're just doing circles in a cul-de-sac. And I think, to me, what I hope that the audience listening to this takes away from is the genuine joy that at least it sounded like in your voice, of being able to ride a motorcycle again. Is if you could say anything to someone out there listening that might be, struggling coming back from a motorcycle crash, or, be in a similar place to, where you were, what would you want them to be the takeaway now that you have made it through it and you are on the other side and you are riding again? What would you say to somebody, in your position, 5 years ago?
man, that phrase is already out there, and it is you got to get back up and get back on that horse. You know what I'm saying? That phrase is not just for the horse. When they tell you to get up and get back on that horse, is you, now that you've fallen off that horse, this big machine, this animal that seems as if like, okay, it's now intimidating, and now you're timid, you're a little scared inside. You know, you got to overcome that fear. You know, that's the only way, you know, that you're going to be able to overcome. You know, if you just decide to, once you fall off of it, oh, it's not for me, or I'm done, or it's over, you know, you're never going to be able to overcome it. You're never going to be able to get that joy again. You're never going to be able to see what's actual possible, what you can do. So, you know, for anybody that's in my shoes, that's gone down, learn from it. You know what I'm saying? Take those precautionary measures, wear your gear, you know, take those riding courses, be safe, understand what it was or what happened, learn from it, you know, and, you know, you can't say that it will never happen again, but just be prepared. You know what I'm saying? Be as prepared as you can be, you know, and it's okay. Some days you might fall, you might go down, you know, but as long as you take those precautionary measures, you know, just if you're able to get up and walk away, don't be scared to get back on it again.
Well, that's a pretty good place to end, I would say. Jay, I'll unless you have anything else you'd like to add, I feel like you've really brought the whole thing full circle. It's been super impressive to hear you tell your story, and yeah, just interesting to hear, you know, what you were thinking during all of it, and I think that I speak for Spurg, and I'm sure many of the audience members, in saying thank you for taking the time to hang out with us today and tell your story.
Thank you for sharing the story with not just Zach and I, but also with the audience. Yeah, I think it's amazing.
No problem, man. I really appreciate you guys giving me this platform to talk to the audience. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, everybody. Jay Rampage Richardson. He's rampaging through life. That's for sure. I don't really know what to say about that story. I'm kind of speechless.
What strength is all I kept thinking. Like when he was talking about like his will to walk again, and every time his muscles would grow, it would have to re-tear the skin, and
my God,
just the strength that you have to want to come back from that, let alone want to ride a motorcycle again, is unbelievable.
It is. It really is. And I hope that you all listening, it's tough to say enjoyed hearing that, because it is difficult to listen to at some points, but he's an amazing individual, and it's really fascinating to hear his story, and I'm thrilled that he shared it with us. I guess with that, I'll say that, believe it or not, we have one more story to get to today. So yeah, tell everyone who's next, Birch.
Yeah, so we have reached Luke Tarrant's story. Luke is joining us from his home in London to tell us about how a motorcycle adventure through South America led to the loss of his leg in a remote village. Unlike our other guests, Luke's accident was actually more recent, and at the time of recording this, he's yet to ride a bike again. So without any further ado, let's hear Luke's story. All right, so here with our next guest, we have Luke coming to us from London. Luke, thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Yes, lads, thanks for having me on. And cheers for waking up early on a Monday morning to get the combo in as well. I appreciate it.
Just to be clear, everybody, he's referencing my time zone as I'm in California. It's currently 9:15 in the morning, so that's very generous of you, but if I'm not ready to do a podcast at 9:15 on a Monday morning, Luke, then I really shouldn't even call myself a professional.
Zach, you look like it's 3 p.m. and you've had a whole day out in the sun, mate. You look good. Don't worry about
Nice. I think that was a compliment, but maybe it was that classic British sarcasm.
It's a compliment. You look wonderful.
Right on. Okay, so we got a lot of questions we want to ask you, and obviously we connected with you for to hear your story, which we'll get into, but we want to start the conversation with pretty basic question, really, which is, how did you come into motorcycling? Like, what was your path to motorcycling? Yeah. Was it via family or social media? And what was your first bike that you rode?
Not family or social media. To be honest, ironically, my mum, when I bought my first motorbike, I feel kind of bad saying this now because she ended up being correct, but she literally begged me not to get a motorbike. I'm talking like she sounds kind of bad. She actually got on her knees. She was like, please don't do this. And I was like, Mum, it's happening. Sorry, love. But she, my family absolutely hate motorbikes. They always have done, and probably hate them a bit more now. But yeah, when I was like in my late teens, I just got really into like doing little trips with my mates to like foreign countries. We save up our money and go to like all teenagers do from England anyway. Go to like Asia, and you rent a moped for 2 weeks, and you bomb about on that. So that was my first taste adventuring on two wheels. And then every trip the bike started to get a bit larger, and then eventually they're gears, and then each time we come back and we get a slightly bigger bike, to the point when I didn't even have a license, but we'd be abroad with like 650cc adventure bikes before we'd even like passed our licenses at home, because in the UK you can only get full direct access license when you're 24. And so I did my license, and then the first bike I bought was the first one I owned, a Yamaha XSR 700, which actually ended up getting nicked in London about 2 months.
That's so when you say nicked for our American audience, stolen is
stolen.
what I'm presuming?
There's a real problem in London with people stealing motorbikes. It just like you leave it outside. I left it outside a pub for about 10 minutes with a disc lock on, and I had a tracker in it, and I got a call from the tracking company saying, it looks like your key's not in the ignition, but your bike's about a mile down the road, and they cut the disc lock out the disc and the brakes, and whacked it on the back of a lorry and just drove off with it. So yeah, that
were they able to recover it, the tracking company?
Well, actually, they started using that motorbike to do armed robberies in London. So I think my old XSR, because like it's quite a nifty little bike, it's lightweight, and they used it for 9 armed robberies in London, and then on the 9th one, the guy riding it crashed it. So they recovered the bike, what was left of it, but obviously it was scrap metal. So yeah.
But did they think that you were the one? Did the police come and knock on your door and think that you were the one doing the robberies, or did you already report it stolen?
So the police turned up on the day, and we actually at first we were chasing the bike, because I had it on the tracker through the streets of London. Like I was in the back of the police car, but while we were doing that, they were taking the bike apart in the van and got the tracker out from like wherever it was hidden. So we actually found the tracker on the floor. We found it. So when they started doing robberies with it, I mean, the police knew it didn't belong to me anymore. The one thing that was quite funny was they for some reason they left the number plate on it, which I thought was bizarre. I thought they'd take the number plate off, because I kept getting parking tickets through in like random parts of London that I'd never been to after my bike was stolen. And I had another bike at that point, so I'd bomb out and go try and find it. I could never find the thing. But yeah.
So they put it on the back of a truck, stole it, left your license plate on it, so that you would then receive all the citations. I got to be honest, I'm looking forward to your story, Luke, but I would love to have that XSR on as a guest, because it sounds like it had led an incredible life.
Yeah, do you know what? Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get onto this, but in terms of like amount of sadness, the amount of sadness I had from having that motorbike stolen was genuinely more than when I lost my leg, and I'm not even joking.
Wow!
I was when that bike got stolen, I was genuinely heartbroken for like 2 months, and the insurance ended up paying out and stuff, and it felt a bit better once I got the new one. But genuinely, I was so sad for like 2 months.
Well, so let's get into that. You mentioned that your love of two wheels kind of started with adventuring and going out in the world and seeing things. And that was ultimately what got you into some trouble. But sort of talk us through, where you were and what you were up to, and how this sort of culmination of all your travels led you to where you were.
Yeah. So, obviously when I was younger, I got into doing these trips, and they weren't long trips. Like maybe a month or so, I'd do the holidays of university, and we'd bomb around on these mopeds and whatever, and then it turned into bikes, and the bikes and the travel came hand in hand for me. Like I've never been the sort of person who gets really bothered about like bike specifics, and I'm not that bothered about like, you know, oh, I did this thing to the bike and did. For me, bikes are what you can do with them. Like, I just love riding my bike,
Right.
and I enjoy speaking about them and looking at them and being on. But like, I'm not like a mechanics nerd. I just like riding bikes.
Right.
So
that's a good distinction. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I got to finish uni, I got a proper job for a bit, and I was doing like a sort of financy job, and I was like, this is all right. I've earned a bit of money to like be able to go and do my travels. I've actually got no real interest in finance itself, so I quit and I started. In my head, I was like, I've saved up a bit of cash. I'll go and do motorbike traveling for as long as I don't run out of money, which would have happened at some point. But so I went off to Asia. I did like about 4 or 5 months riding around Asia. I had a couple of different bikes, so I just rented them then. I had a Triumph Tiger 1200, which was actually a bit too heavy because whenever you're off road, you drop it. It was a bit of a pain to pick it up. And then I ended up having a CB 500 for a bit. Like, just, it was kind of, in my head, it was like my warm up trip. And then I went to Australia, did another month through there, riding down the East Coast, came back through Europe. But in my head, the gold star trip, like the gold standard trip, whatever you call it, was like riding from the US to Ushuaia. The kind of, in my head, that's the big trip. And everything else was like
north to south across the Americas, like classic adventure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I flew to the US with absolutely no idea how I was going to get my hands on a bike. I went to LA. They were really funny about like buying a bike in LA for some reason, because you need like all the documents and whatnot. So then I flew to Texas. Thinking I might have more luck there. And I managed to find this English bloke in a dealership in Texas who like pulled some strings and got me a Suzuki V-Strom that they had in stock, which was like, at the time, I was just going to take whatever they had, sort of thing. Like, if I had to do on a sports bike, I would have at that point. I just needed a bike. So I got the V-Strom, and then just started heading down through the Americas. So I drove down through Mexico, all of Central America.
What year was this, Luke?
This was like 2 years ago now, so like 2023 roughly.
Okay.
It was about 2 years ago, and I'd spent about a year on that trip driving through all the Americas. I had no like plan or agenda. I just knew I was going to keep heading south till I eventually got to Ushuaia. Was my plan. But like sometimes I'd meet a family that I liked. In Guatemala, I lived with a family for like 3 weeks because I was just having a fun time. So I wasn't on like a schedule. I just did it for me. There was no social media involved like I've got now. It was literally just me, my bike, and whatever I wanted to do that day. And it generally was the most fun I've had in my entire life. I've never had any more fun before it or after it. It's like, I think that would be the best thing I've ever done. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to get back there, but yeah.
How long were you on the road? How long were you on the road on your trip, Luke, before the accident?
In the Americas, that stint was about a year, and then a few months before in like Asia and whatnot. So like a decent amount of time.
Yeah. So you're over a year into your trip.
Yeah.
What happens? What goes wrong?
So when you get to Panama in the Americas, you can't ride through the Darien Gap because it's carnage in there. So I flew my motorbike across, and I got a small boat into Colombia, picked my bike up. At the time, a friend of mine was with me for a bit, Jack. When I crashed, we went together, but long story, we ended up going into Venezuela together, which was a whole experience in itself. Nearly managed to kill myself there too, getting dengue fever. And then came back into Colombia, and I was on my own. I was driving down from north to south, basically on my way to Ecuador. And yeah, I had a crash somewhere in the Andes Mountains, but I mean, I'm not 100% sure like exactly where it was because I've got no idea what happened in the crash. I don't know what caused it. I don't know if there was somebody that crashed into me. I don't know if I just slipped out on some oil or sand or an animal running the road. I've got absolutely no idea. Don't know who.
Wow. You have no memory of it whatsoever.
Zero. I have memory of and this is going to sound really strange and almost a bit sort of hippie vibes of me saying it, but I remember the feeling of the crash, but I do not remember the crash itself, if that makes any sense. I remember the feeling of like sheer panic. Like I can remember the moment it happened, but I've got no idea why. And to anyone listening thinking that sounds like nonsense, it sounds like nonsense to me. But I do remember thinking, something's gone wrong here. Like, I'm about to die. No, I didn't think I was about to die, actually. I never thought I was going to die. But I remember thinking, but I've got no vision. I've got nothing in it. Like, it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is kind of
interesting.
Strange to try and explain, but yeah. Zero
And
idea.
So what is your first memory? You woke up in an ambulance, in a hospital, in a helicopter, what?
So I was in quite remote Colombia, and I remember, so I have like 3 stages of memory. I've got that bit, which is just remembering like the feeling. Then the bit after is like trying to remember a really bad dream that happened ages ago. That's the only way I can describe it. And I remember there being someone with me. The road was kind of like up there, and I was not near the road. And there was a man with me. If he was in this room, I wouldn't be able to tell you, oh, that's the bloke that was next to me. I've got zero idea what he looks like. I feel like he was maybe mid-30s Colombian man, but I don't know where I've got that from. I just feel it would like, but I remember someone being there. And then I have like snippets of memory after that. I remember being in this place with a wooden roof. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, it's got a wooden roof. It can't be a very good hospital. Like, what hospitals have wooden roofs? And then I remember someone was trying to chop off my motorbike trousers. And I remember thinking to myself, have fun doing that. Like, they're pretty solid trousers. So, like, I have these weird little memories, but that's it really. And then nothing again. Actually, there's one that has come back to me since. And my mate Jack, who was in Colombia, jogged my memory. He said that we spoke when I was in that clinic, because I must have said to him, "Oh, I'm like call Jack or something," and he said that he called me and said, "How are you, mate?" And apparently I just replied, "Proper." That was it. And then I woke up, like properly woke up. A few hours later, I've got like a whole day missing, basically. A few hours later in another part of Colombia, like an hour and a half north, so they must have taken me in an ambulance. And I woke up, and I remember, obviously, like, I broke both my legs. It wasn't just my left leg, like I broke loads of other bones as well, so I was all wrapped up. And they came in and they just said, the Spanish nurse was like, oh, all in Spanish. And like, obviously I said I could speak Spanish by then, but when you're getting told your legs being chopped off in Spanish, I wanted a bit of reassurance on Google Translate as well. I was like, oh, let's just check.
That's fair.
Let's check what you're saying is what I think you're saying. And then, but at the time I thought they were chopping my leg off because they didn't have the necessary like medical staff in that part of Colombia to deal with it. That was what I thought. So I was like, I need to find a way of getting to Medellin, but Medellin was like 10 hours away through the mountains. And I said to the hospital staff, I was like, you need to take me to Medellin. They were like, no, mate, like, you're having your leg chopped off here. And I said, well, can I speak to the doctor? And they said, oh, the doctor's coming into town tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Should chop your leg off. By this point,
wait, so you're in this small little, presumably, there's not even a doctor on staff in this place. Like, they have to come in
at that time of day, which was the evening at that point. There was no doctor to speak. I didn't speak the whole time I was in that place. I didn't speak to a doctor. I just spoke to nurses. But I was like, a lot of people always say to me, oh mate, what was it like when they came in and said, we're going to chop your leg off? And like, I barely even remember it. It wasn't like a big moment. I was just like, no, not, like, get me out of it. Do you know what I mean? There was no like, oh my God, my leg. It was just, I kind of describe it now as like survival mode. I was just like, nah, right, what do I need to do? So I got on, at the time, I had no Instagram following. I had like my mates on Instagram, and I put a few like pictures up of me getting about, and wouldn't go on social media for like a month, and I just put a few photos up. I didn't have a following. It wasn't. I didn't didn't use it at all. But I went on my Instagram story, and it's still on there in my like Instagram highlights. I just said, and I was really mashed up. I had bruises all over my face, like from where my helmet had hit my face on the inside, and I just said, I need to get to Medellin. Like, can somebody help me get to Medellin, because they're going to try to chop my leg off here, and da-da-da-da. And like, it just blew up. And in the end, through the power of the internet, a Colombian bloke who I've obviously paid back since and said thank you to and everything, like basically helped me get a private ambulance from that part of Colombia to Medellin. So I think my crash was really early in the morning, because I'd set off super early that day because it was a long day riding. By like 1 a.m. or something, I was in an ambulance, like a rickety little like ambulance, felt like it had made out of tin, driving through the mountains to Medellin. And then I got to Medellin, and I'm ranting at you now, I'm just telling you the whole story in one. Got to Medellin. By that time, Jack had got there. They opened the doors. Jack was there. I'm thinking, right, we've made it, sorted. And then they were like, no, mate, we need to chop your leg off anyway. But I was adamant I was going to keep the thing, so I didn't let him chop it off. I was like, no, you're gonna find a way of leaving it on.
I will probably not understand. I'm not medically inclined, but like, what was it about the crash where they had to take your leg? Like, was it just so badly crushed?
It was just mashed up. Like, I've seen an X-ray, and you can't even really make out bones in it. It was just mashed. But yeah, so they ended up. The crash was the 30th of May. They ended up chopping my leg off on the 2nd of June because I was adamant they weren't going to do it and they were going to save it somehow. I was like calling people in the UK, like doctors, like, right, I was trying to get the X-rays and like message people in the UK, like, what do you think?
That's understandable.
Like, could you save this at home? Am I having my leg chopped off because I'm in Colombia? They were like, I know now, no. And the hospital I was in Medellin was really good. But because for whatever reason, because it was debris from the crash or because the leg had been on too long, whatever, the leg started to get really like minging, and I ended up getting sepsis. So they chopped it off. I was fine. I was with it. I had one less leg, but then, and I like it sounds kind of stupid saying it now, but at the time I hadn't really absorbed what had happened. I was quite blasé about it. I was like making jokes about it and stuff, and everyone was like, all right, chill out, mate, like you've just had your leg chopped off. And then but then within about 6 hours after that, I got sepsis. My organs stopped working. I was on a ventilator. Like, I was fully in critical care, like completely zonked out. And that's the thing that actually nearly killed me, not the leg chop. So yeah, that's your synopsis. I'm giving you all in one.
Yeah. No, that's so kind of some backstory. It's like, I guess I want to go back and ask a couple of questions. So you get to Medellin. Do you have any idea where your motorcycle or any of your stuff is? Or are you just completely on your own with what's on your persons at this point?
So when I woke up in that, not the place with the wooden roof, the place where they said they're going to chop my leg off, I woke up, I had none of my stuff. I was completely naked. All I had on top of me, and bear in mind, I had a quad lock phone case as well on my phone. That had gone. All I had was my phone on top of my chest. So I woke up and I was like, my phone's there, nothing else, literally nothing else. The police in the like municipality where I crashed, they had my stuff and they had my bike. And there's some people in Colombia that helped retrieve it and stuff. But I ended up getting all my stuff back. My motorbike's still in Medellin. I've got the tracker on it still. I can still see where it is. And I'll go and retrieve it. Like, we can get onto this after, but my plan next year is to go back to where I crashed in Colombia, see if I can find out what happened, go and look at my bike, go and chat to people in the town. It's a tiny little town, and then finish off the bike trip down to Ushuaia. So next year I might find out what happened, but let's see.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right on. We'll have to have you back on then. That's well, please try not to do that.
Yeah, let's hope that it's a story where you just come back and tell us all good things about you finishing the trip.
So ultimately, you lose the left leg below your knee. Is that right?
Yeah. The trouble is, they had to, because I had sepsis, they kept chasing the infection. So I had they actually chopped it off 8 times. And now I've got a much shorter stump than is ideal. So like it's below the knee. I was one more surgery away from above the knee. Because they kept chasing it. So now I get really bad stump envy because like I look at other blokes' stumps, I'm like, no, I wish my stump was as long as yours. Because it just makes it harder to walk with a short stump because you've got your whole body weight pressure going through a tiny little bit of leg. But anyway, yes, below the knee.
Right.
But below the knee, I'm assuming is probably easier to walk than if it were above the knee. Is that correct?
Yeah, It's better to have a knee. But it would have been ideal to have a few more centimeters underneath the knee. I've got like 9 centimeters.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I guess, I don't know. I guess just for the context of the story, and I'm guessing people have the same question I do, the listeners. What was the recovery like for you after you recovered from the septic infection from sepsis and you were still in Colombia by that point, or had you gone home? And like, what was the recovery like coming back out of kind of like, I don't know, your body recovering from sepsis, and also you recovering from the amputation, basically?
I mean, so I was in hospital in Colombia for a month, and that month stint was savage. Like, because obviously I had the sepsis, and I had all these other broken bones as well. My right leg was snapped through the skin. And at one point, it was like, what are we going to do with that leg? It was a bit touch and go with that too. My collarbone, my hand, everything was. And then when I had the sepsis, there was the ventilator and all this stuff. Like, so that was savage for like, I don't know how long it was, like a week and a half, 2 weeks at the start of the hospital stint there. It was just like, keep him alive. They didn't even do any surgeries because they were like, if we operate, it couldn't be good. It might not be good. So he just literally left me on a ventilator and just kept me alive. And then when I started to get over the sepsis, they were like, right, now we need to start doing all these surgeries to try and work out like what parts of your body you're going to keep. And that's when they kept chopping off more of my stump because they were just chasing the infection. So every day it was like, every day I might have a surgery. So I'd have to wait till 3 or 4 p.m. And at 3 or 4 p.m, they come in, they take the bandages off, they poke around in the wound. It was fucking madness. And then they'd be like, okay, we're going to operate today. And then I'd go have a surgery, come back. And then the day after would be the same again. So for 2 weeks, I had a surgery every other day. And then
and were they doing anything for your other, like, were they also setting your other leg in a cast? Nah. Were they doing something with your collarbone?
Because they said that they had to deal with the infection and deal with that. So honestly, one of the worst things was every day, because my right leg the tibia was snapped. So they'd have to move me to do like a daily like a bed bath thing. But when they lift my leg up on my right leg, I felt the bones click over each other on the right. And I'd be like, and then they'd sit me back down again, and the bones would click back over each other again on my right leg because there were just nothing there. But on the final surgery, they sewed up my left leg, so made it into a stump. That's what I call it. And then on my right leg, they put a metal rod from my knee down to my ankle and screwed it in. And that took months to heal because obviously there was a big bit of bone missing in the middle. But yeah, so I've got a metal rod in my right leg now. And then the collarbone in the hand, like, it was just so not important at the time compared to everything else that I've still got a broken collarbone. My collarbone's still completely snapped. Like, I had an X-ray on it recently. And
it never stitched?
No. They said I had an X-ray on it like 2 months ago, and they said your collarbone looks like you broke it yesterday, but it actually doesn't really hurt, to be honest. Like, I'm just gonna leave it until like I have to do it one day. But
wow,
yeah, at the moment, yeah, it's all right.
So you're going through this massive recovery. Were you at this point thinking at all about like getting back on a motorcycle, or were you at this point just trying to figure out if you were going to survive? Like, what was your mental state?
Never. Sorry to interrupt you, Spurge, but to clarify your question a little bit, you said, Luke, that you're not like a oh, I did the suspension and I got this sick new piece to my bike. That's not what motorcycles are for you. It's not like jewelry. It's like a thing to take you on an adventure. So I'm super curious, based on, to get back to Spurge's question, like, were you just sort of like, cool, hopefully I can keep seeing the world, or do you have any draw back to actually riding?
Oh, when I say I'm into bikes because what they do for me, I don't mean I don't love bikes, because I do. And the only way I can describe it, and I'm gonna get even more hippie on you now, is like when I was on my bike and I was going through the mountains and I was on my own and I had my earplugs in, and you just completely at one with what's around you. You're not thinking about anything. I'm not thinking, what am I having for dinner? I'm not thinking, oh, like, I hope that girl texts me back. I'm not thinking anything. I'm just thinking, I'm just in it. And the only way people describe like a flow state, and it's the closest in my life I've ever come to just pure, like a pure meditative state, if that makes any sense. I'm not saying it's like that every time.
Yeah.
There are days when I'm on my bike and it's pissing it down with rain, and I'm like, it's like, it'd be way nicer to be in a car. But I mean, I remember a time really close to when I crashed. I was in the Andes Mountains, and I was up near this place called El Cocoy. There's a glacier, so I was riding up at like 5,000 meters. I was on my own. I hadn't spoken to a soul all day, and I was just going through the mountains, and the sun started to set, and I just started hysterically laughing on my bike. And I don't know if it was the altitude or just what it was, but I was just hysterically laughing, and the laughing just turned into tears. And it was the first time in my life I've cried tears of joy, like pure happiness. And when I think now about what I'm not doing, because I'm traveling again. I've been to like 10 countries in the last 2 months. I've been loads of traveling, but I'm not doing what I did before, which is on my own, on two wheels, just hurtling through the atmosphere. I'm not thinking I'm changing gear, I'm going around a corner. I'm just like at one with what's around me. It sounds like super hippie. And if someone said this to me in the past, I'd be like, shut up, mate, you're riding your motorbike. But like, it's this like state which I was in that I can't get back to unless I get back on a bike, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. If it's ever going to make sense, it would be on a motorcycle podcast, man. I'm sure you talk to lots of people about how harrowing your story is and how difficult all the times you had in a hospital. And if you try and tell them this about how much you love the situation that you were in before it happened, or what you were enjoying about life, it's probably really hard for people to comprehend that. But I think that Spurge and I think I speak for Spurge when I say that he has not ridden through the Andes and cried tears of joy, but we do understand what you mean, right? Like anyone who has spent a long time on a motorcycle will have that feeling of just like, it feels truly special. Yeah. And that's like that's an amazing thing that you're able to reflect on. So I guess to get back to Spurge's question, when did you start to feel that during your healing process? When did you start to feel like you would get back on a bike again, or was it just like automatic and you assumed you would?
It was immediate. It wasn't. There was no. It's not been like a thing I've thought about. When my recovery, like I said at the start, I was in this survival mode, and then by the time I got back to England, I was in hospital for another 2 months in England. Then I got a prosthetic. And I was like really excited. I've got a prosthetic. I'm able to walk around like normal again. That wasn't the case. I massively overdid it. I was in a really bad way. And I was back in a wheelchair. So like at the start of this year in January, I was in a wheelchair for the whole month. And in that moment, I was like, maybe I can't get back on a bike. Like maybe, like, I'm not sure I can ever do this again, sort of thing. That was kind of, I went into that mindset. But then as my...
Was it mental or was it physical?
Physical, as in I couldn't use a prosthetic because my stump was really bad. It looked like I was going to have more surgeries. It was just, I couldn't get on with a prosthetic. I was in my wheelchair. Like, I know for some people, like the only option is a wheelchair given the injuries they'd got. But for me, I just really struggled with like being sort of down in the wheelchair and stuff. Like, at least if I had my prosthetic on, I couldn't walk very well, but I was up. I was me. I was like, I felt like myself. But then when I was in the wheelchair, I'd gone from being 6'2" to like just staring at everyone's crotch, and it just didn't feel right. Do you know what I mean? And in that moment, I started to doubt if I could get back on the bike. But now my recovery's kind of like going better again. It's just obvious. There's not really a debate. The only thing I am stressed about, not stressed, I do think about is like what like I say, what I miss about the biking is being in that flow state. I'm not thinking about anything. I wonder now if when I'm riding, I'll be like hyper aware of everything. Not that you should be hyper aware of everything when you're riding anyway, but I mean like if I won't be letting myself enjoy it as much as I used to, I'll be thinking, there's a corner, there's sand, like, do you get what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Luke.
Well, I don't think we can relate in the same way that you can. Obviously, we haven't gone through what you've gone through, but no, that makes perfect sense. I think it makes perfect sense.
Luke, I want to back up for a second. Only because it sounds like Joe and Jay had similar experiences when we talked to them. So you're in a wheelchair, you're staring at everybody's crotch. You're used to being 6 foot tall.
When you say bounce me, that sounds super dodgy.
No. But it's interesting. It's like like genuinely, like I as somebody that I always joke when I'm 6'3", and when I run into people that are taller than me, I'm like, oh, this is how like the rest of the world must feel, and I don't like it. I don't like looking up at people. So I genuinely, I can empathize with where you're at, but what's your emotional state at this point? You don't know if you're going to walk. You don't know if you're going to get on with a prosthetic. You don't know if you're going to ride a motorcycle again. Presumably you're upset, you're angry. Like, what was your turning point emotionally getting out of that particular headspace and making the positive step forward?
I would actually say, when I say January was a savage month, it was physically. But in terms of mentally, I'd describe it like it kind of oscillates, but the general trend is up. So when I first had everything happen, even when I got back to England, I wasn't sad at all. I was just in this mode of like, right, today I'm not going to lose my knee. Like, you're not going to take my knee. And then like the whole of Colombia was just that. Then when I got back to England, it was like, okay, right, now I'll get to the amputee hospital. Then I'll get this next stage of recovery. There was always like a thing. And then it hadn't really actually emotionally bothered me yet. I was just like in this mode of just getting it sorted. When I came back to my flat for the first time in London, the hospital said, oh, why don't you go on like weekend release? It makes it sound like I was in prison. Like weekend at home. And my mates came pick me up. They brought me back to my flat in the wheelchair. And I couldn't get through the bathroom door in the wheelchair because the door was too narrow. And then like in the night, I wanted to like go for a wee, and I was like, wait, I can't just walk to the toilet, and my mate's sleeping on the floor, and I'm like stuck in my bed. And that whole thing was so mentally tough. Like that 3 days, it was like it dawned on me that, oh, 1 second, you actually are now disabled and your life's changed. And like until that point, I hadn't really thought about it. I was just like, oh yeah, I'll have a prosthetic, it'll be all right. But being in my flat and trying to cook an egg on the stove, and the stove's up here, and I'm in my wheel, like it was just awful. And I've never felt depressed in my life, but for those 3 days, I'm sure that's what it feels like to be depressed. It was just horrendous. But then like I went back to the hospital and I got back into the recovery, and I got over it. And then the next time I came home, it happened again, but less. It dipped less than the last time. And like, I still have it now. Things still piss me off now when I'm like, I want to do something and my leg's flaring up. I was at like a concert at the weekend. I was stood there and I was just standing in one place was hurting my leg, and it was winding me up, and I had to keep sitting on the floor. But that dip is infinitely less big than the first dip when I was at home. So I kind of like remind myself of those dips and how I got over then, and these ones are smaller. If that makes sense, it just sort of the general trend is up, but it always, and I think it'll be like that for my whole life. Like there'll always be things that wind me up, but it's never going to be as bad as the first one.
It sounds like you have an amazingly positive attitude just in general. Like if we were to take the accident out, it sounds like if you had to say you're a glass half full or glass half empty kind of individual, it sounds like you're a glass half full kind of guy.
Yeah, maybe. I just like, I know the reason I was even doing the trip I was doing in the first place is I have this like deep feeling that we're not. I'm going to go real deep on you, but like I've always had this feeling that life's kind of like running out. Like I've got to quickly do all this stuff before it's over. And that's why when I got to that point in my like finance job, after done it for a couple of years, I was like, nah, this isn't, I need to sack this off, do the next thing, And honestly, the hardest bit about being in the wheelchair was just feeling like I was wasting weeks of my life not doing anything. So the moment I got a prosthetic, I was like, right, I'm off again. Like I'm doing my stuff. And it's this feeling that like I want to make the most of life, and I still am making the most of life. I'm just doing it in a bit of a different way. Right? Like I wouldn't say it's like half full, half empty. I'm just like, I'll just drink the water. Just like,
I love that.
Don't worry about how much is in there. So
just drink it.
So, what was your connection, or have you ridden a motorcycle again at this point, or have you been in touch with Titanium about how to do that, but you haven't yet? I'm not actually clear on that part of your story.
Yeah, so I've been on the back of my mate's bikes, just like driving around, but I've not ridden myself because obviously my left foot is how I change gears. But I'm going out in. I'm losing track of the months. What month are we in? June. So in next month, in like a few weeks, I'm actually going out to New York with Joe to get back on the bike for the first time. So that is going to be my first time back on the bike. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know what the plan is in terms of adapting the bike, but
yeah, right.
I mean, I'm missing a left foot, so I'm gonna need to either have the gears up on handlebars, or I think when I eventually get back out to Colombia next year and finish off that trip, potentially I'll do it on a bike with like a Honda with DCT or something, like an automatic transmission. But like for now, I need to get back, ride a bike, and then work out all that stuff for later.
So for as far as like you're flying out to New York in about a month, you're going to meet up with Joe and the Ride Again folks. Like, what's going through your head? Do you have are you excited? Are you nervous? Like, you're getting back on a bike for the first time since you lost your leg. Like, where's your mental state at for the anticipation for that ride?
I'm excited more than anything. I'm not nervous about riding a bike itself. The only thing I'm potentially a bit nervous about is if I enjoy it as much. I'm not nervous about doing it or if I crash again, because like I said, I've ridden my bike thousands and thousands of times and I only crashed once. I'm not scared I'll get back on it and just ride straight into a tree. I'm just worried that I'll get back on it and won't be able to click back into that same flow state that I described earlier. But that's my only concern. I am genuinely just excited more than anything. Like I've sat on my mates' bikes, not ridden them, and the only feeling I get inside of me is I want to ride this thing. So right on. We'll see how it goes.
Well, you mentioned you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you know, your mom was not the biggest fan of you getting a motorcycle before all of this. Yeah. Like how have your family, how's your family's reaction to this been? Friends, like the people around you that are the most important to you, what has their reaction been through this whole process?
They basically said to me, like, we would rather you never rode a bike ever again. Like if we had the choice and it was our choice, you wouldn't ride a bike. But the thing that supersedes that, if that's the right word, the thing above that is just that they want me to be happy, and they know that doing the thing which I love means more to them than it does my like safety, if that makes sense. Not that being back on a bike is completely unsafe. They're fine with it. They'd rather I wasn't riding again or finishing my trip, but they've made their peace with it, if that makes sense. Like there's not really been a moment where my parents have said, please don't do that. They're just like, we know what you're going to do. You're going to do what makes you happy, and we'll support you. Just try not to nearly kill yourself again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty understandable that they feel, you know, a little bit hard done by your pastime, you know, like especially your mom being like, I don't want you to do that in the first place, and then something bad happens. You can understand it being like, I really extra don't want you to do it anymore. But it sounds like you have, you know, it sounds like they are
supportive.
Supportive in so much as that they're supportive of your mental health, and they understand that your mental health requires you or asks you to do things that they don't that they wouldn't choose to do
Yeah.
themselves, or they wouldn't choose for you to do, which is that's not, not everyone has that from their folks or their family. So that's noble of them, I suppose.
And it sounds like, from a friend standpoint, like you mentioned, one of your friends already took you for a ride on the bike, so that you have some friends that ride motorcycles that are probably, a little bit supportive of, helping you figure out what your next step is.
Yeah, they I've got my closest mates all ride bikes, and my mate Jack, who I was with for a large stint of the Americas, he has come home and he's waiting for me to be able to finish the trip together now. So in his like, he just wants to be back on a bike, because the sooner I get back on a bike, the sooner he can go finish his trip. Because when I left him in Colombia, the idea was he was going to carry on. I said to him, I was like, mate, you need to finish this trip by yourself. Like, don't not do it because of me. And one day I was in hospital in England and he just turned up. He was like, mate, I'm not doing it without you. And I was like, my boy.
Wow.
Right. So yeah, he just wants to be back on the bike as soon as possible. And I've got other mates who ride bikes as well. So yeah, everyone's supportive.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you, I guess, I feel like we can let you get on with your day here pretty soon. I can already sense that we want to have you back on the podcast, as I sort of joked about earlier, when you are able to get back to South America and hopefully get back on a bike and so on and so forth.
Well up for that.
I'm curious if you have any, we've asked the couple of fellows we've had on, who have had sort of similarly harrowing experiences, with a crash and getting back on the bike, or wrapping their mind around getting back on the bike. And I'm curious if you have had anyone ask you, what you've learned from this, or if you have any takeaways, or if you have any regrets or anything like that. And I know that you said you don't really remember the crash, so it doesn't sound like you have any really specific takeaways from, like, oh yeah, you got to cover the front brake lever because XYZ happened. You don't have that. But when you reflect on it, and I'm sure you've done some reflecting, is there any piece of what happened to you that you blame on anything other than fate and circumstance in the universe?
No, I wouldn't. Not once have I thought to myself, why me? I've never had that thought. And this is going to be a hard thing for you to wrap your head around, because it sounds mental, but I was speaking to my mate the other day, and I truly mean this. If my crash was about a year ago, if there was a big red button here, and I could press it, and I'd go back to the day when I got on my bike and not get on it, and life went in a different direction, I wouldn't press the button. Like, life's fine. It's like, I still enjoy what I'm doing. I've had opportunities come out of this crash that I wouldn't have had if it hadn't happened. And like, who knows where my life would be if that didn't happen. Like, I genuinely promise you, I mean this, if that button was there, wouldn't press it. I'd live the life which I'm living now. So my only real takeaway is just, bad shit's gonna happen. You just got to roll with it, hope for the best, and just enjoy what you got. Because I truly am happy, and I don't for a minute think, oh, why has this happened to me? It's ruined my life, because it hasn't. I'm as happy as I was before.
Don't worry about how much water is in the glass. Just drink the water and enjoy it. We'll have some stickers
by the way,
made.
I haven't heard that before. That's my new thing.
No, I know.
No, that's you. That's all you, Luke.
Yeah.
I think that deserves to be on a t-shirt.
I think I might get it tattooed.
This has been just an awesome conversation, and I'll just say, I think I speak for Spurge when I say thank you for sharing all this. And I know you've probably talked about a lot with a lot of different people at this point, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story and what happened and all the bad things that happened to you, and your mental state through all of it. It's been really kind of, it's been interesting and humbling to listen to. Yeah, for
I appreciate
sure,
it a lot. Thanks for having me on. And when we do get back on the bike and start traveling around again, I'll have to come back and update you lads how it's going.
No,
Yes.
I know we talked about that, and sometimes people don't take Zach and I seriously, and they think that we're joking. But no, I would love to have you back on. So if you get back on a bike and you and your mate go and you finish the trip and you have this new adventure, like we would love to bring you back on, and we'll do an episode kind of following up on your adventure and where you're at then.
Wicked.
So
hopefully I've still got 3 limbs when we have that chat.
Indeed. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for hanging out, and let's keep in touch.
Nice one. See you in a bit.
Well, that was again. I think as I'm listening to these stories, Luke's was the one where I was like, "Oh, that could happen to me." I kept thinking about when you and I were in India together, and we were in like the remote little villages, and we'd pass like the little makeshift hospital. I'm using air quotes, like hospitals on the side of the road. Right. And like we were talking to each other, and we're just like, I really don't want to get hurt here. I don't want to have to go there for medical help. And that's all I kept thinking of was like, could you imagine waking up in a remote village with like a straw roof, and they're like, we're going to take your leg off in a language that you do not understand?
Yeah. There's a lot of, there were a lot of situations presented to us in all of these conversations that I had never really imagined for myself because I've never been in that situation. Yeah. And I don't mean to be glib about it at all. But it really, I found myself kind of transported there, and it was very introspective for me and interesting. But ultimately, like you said in the beginning, Spurg, I did find myself really, the way I found myself connecting with all these guys was the drive to want to be on a bike, because they all, in different ways, they all said that the feeling that they have when they ride is unique and special in their life, and kind of, I don't know, for one reason or another, not that they didn't have other reasons to live or to recover, but like worth fighting for, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting piece of motorcycling to distill, is how much you care about it and how much you love it. And hearing these stories was a really clear illustration of how much these 3 individuals love it and care about it. And it's hard not to sort of feel a little bit of wind in your sails from that. Agreed?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think about on a much lesser scale, you know, the accidents that you and I have talked about in the podcast that we've each had.
Sure. Yeah.
And how like there's yet to be one where I'm not like, you know, I remember, you know, at my worst, it was, you know, busting up my knee and, you know, having to go to the hospital, but there was never a point where I was like, I'm not going to get my knee fixed because that's all.
Right, I mean, or I'm not going to walk again. Or
right.
Whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, even on a lesser scale, I remember thinking, I can't wait to heal up to get back on a motorcycle, and to hear people that have gone through it at a much worse level than anything I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And they still want to get back on, I think is just such a powerful message for people to walk away from. And a little bit of the fact that like some of this is humbling, like what we're all choosing to do by getting on a motorcycle is, you know, it's not going to be as safe as going out and getting in a car. But even as I believe it was Jay was talking about, like he was laying there in the burn unit and the dude in the Ford F-150 was across from him, and there were people that died in that accident. So you're always going to be, there's always something that could go wrong out there.
Well, 2 more things I'd like to say. One is that, you know, if you listen to this podcast and you thought that we weren't maybe confrontational enough, or we didn't question enough the situations that the individuals got themselves into, whether it was riding internationally without a license, or suggesting that they commute across the eastern seaboard of the US to save time when lane splitting is not legal there. These are things that we realized, and really not kind of the point of the episode. Is that fair to say, Spurg? Like we recognize that there are some things that we have addressed in the past and we might address in the future. But those things were not the topics of conversation this time around. And we just want you to know that we heard those things, and we think that there's a time and place for those conversations, and this was not it.
Correct. 100%. I think for us, it was really allowing Joe and Jay and Luke to tell their stories as it happened, and to really focus on their individual return to riding. And that's what we hope that you take away as well, is that these are meant to be inspirational stories about coming back from something and letting your passion for motorcycling be the lead.
So the last thing I want to say, before we say the last things we'll say, is
there's always a last thing to say, Zachary.
There's more. I don't want to distill. I don't want to like pick a favorite or like say that anyone's story was more or less than another one's, or none of that matters at all. Can I just say, Spurg, as a cat owner, the story about the dog coming into the burn ward and him being like Jay, that story that Jay told about Peaches, the basset hound coming in, and him, I just cannot get over that, man. I can't get over it. That's just such a, I'm blown away. I've got goosebumps talking about it right now.
Yeah.
I can't.
And how that inspired, like, I think each of these riders had that moment where it was like, they needed that little boost to come back from. And I think when Jay got into his, where he was just like, it wasn't the other people. It wasn't the doctors. Like, he was shutting down. He wasn't listening to what the doctors were saying. Right. And all of a sudden this little dog recognized him as a human being. God. Like, that's the part. Like, it just got me choked up. Like, it's it's unreal. And like, I had dogs growing up. I love dogs. I'm not anti-dog. I just, that was just like a gut punch for me. That was such an amazing piece of, amazing piece of the universe, of connections between living beings, of his recovery, of like medical care. There's so many bright, spots that you can take from that story, but I had to call that out. I don't think I've stopped thinking about it really since he told us that story. It's incredible. And I think, for me, looking at someone like Joe, who came back from his accident and didn't want to just put it behind him, but rather said, I'm going to go further. I'm going to create an organization to help other people come back from their accidents. And, again, that's how we learned about Jay's story. That's how we learned about Luke's story, was through the Ride Again Foundation. I would encourage anyone listening to this that found some inspiration from any of these individuals to hear more about who they are, to consume a little bit more of their content. Joe Forde can be found at Titanium's 1000 on both Instagram and TikTok. He's got a lot of great video content up there, and Joe does a good job of sharing other people's stories as well. You can learn more about the Ride Again Foundation through Instagram at Ride Again Foundation, or TikTok at rideagain.incorporated. Jay Richardson can be found on Instagram and TikTok. His handle is rampage.x.j, and Luke can be found on Instagram and TikTok as Luke_Tarrant. That's TARRANT.
Well said. I hope that you all will follow along with these individuals and maybe find some inspiration on your own. I guess with that, Spurjo, we can bid all of the listeners a good day, and we will, of course, welcome you back to Highside, Lowside next time you'd like to join. We will almost certainly be talking about something less important with more levity, and perhaps more laughing. But we hope you enjoyed these stories in this episode. As usual, we hope that you'll leave comments, send us an email at highsidelowside@RevZilla.com if you have anything you'd like to say or submit. And in the meantime, ride safe, and we'll talk at you next time.